Chapter 15. A distance of 2 or 3 kilometers was not far for ordinary people, not to mention the elite freshmen of the Sky Academy. The freshmen in the entrance square became more and more scattered. In less than 10 minutes, they were close to the maze mentioned by Headmaster Zhuang Huayang. At the entrance of the maze, there seemed to be only a few narrow doors for people to enter and exit, but the left and right sides of the whole building were constantly expanding in opposite directions. In a trance, there was a kind of majestic atmosphere that one could not see the end of at a glance. Looking at it this way, the whole maze seemed to be a very standard triangle. What a big triangle! The plan is quite standard. Standing at the entrance of the maze, Li Beitian looked at the maze in front of him, and said with a face full of admiration, "No, it shouldn't be a triangle. If it was a triangle, there would be a lot of corridors to design inside. It would cost a lot of money and be easy to design. It would be suitable for an amusement park. How could the maze of the Sky Academy be so low-level and simple?" Li Tianlan said calmly after carefully observing for a while. He had seen a maze of a similar scale in another place, which was even bigger than the one in front of him. In that damn place, it took him a whole year to barely figure out the overall structure of the maze, and its complexity could be described as crazy. Now, when he saw the maze of the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan suddenly felt very familiar. If his guess was correct, then the maze in front of him was very likely to be a replica of the maze he had seen before. If that was the case, then this maze was not a triangle at all, but a diamond that could deceive everyone's vision. The diamond maze was more complicated than the triangle maze. If one tried to walk through the diamond maze in the form of the triangle maze, it was very likely that he would enter a fork when he was closest to the exit, and then he would go around and around until he returned to the entrance again. Now, when he saw this thing at first sight, Li Tianlan suddenly touched some memories that he did not want to remember, and he felt a headache. So from the moment we stood here, we should have been deceived. Behind the triangle in front of us, there should be another triangle. When combined, it is diamond. Ning Qiancheng raised his eyebrows in surprise. He came from the Border Praetorian Corps. As the large-scale comprehensive corps with the most terrifying combat capability in Zhongzhou State, the Border Praetorian Corps would send its elites to the Sky Academy, or the Deep Sea Academy every year. However, the Sky Academy was a 3-year academy, and it was only responsible for educating one batch of students in 3 years. The content of each batch's entrance maneuver was different. There was even a super entrance maneuver, where the first place was awarded 300 credits. Although the maze was difficult, the seniors who had experienced it would not take it to heart and warn their junior brothers and sisters to pay attention to what to do in the maze. At the end of the day, this was just a labyrinth. They would be able to get out of it sooner or later. The most dangerous thing was still the competitors within the labyrinth. Li Tianlan nodded. Before he could speak, a sweet voice sounded directly behind him. "Yes, it's a diamond." Li Tianlan subconsciously turned around and looked behind him. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan stepped forward and stopped in front of Li Tianlan. "Senior brother, you've been to the Sky Academy before? How do you know that this maze is rhombus-shaped?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with her bright crystal-like eyes and asked softly. She stood quietly in front of Li Tianlan. Her ponytail swayed gently, her body fragrance wafted, and her voice was soft. She exuded a kind of pure but extremely enchanting charm. She was simply an enchantress. Ning Qiancheng's expression was strange. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Beitian looked at Wang Yuetong dumbfoundedly and swallowed hard. He could not hide the fire in his heart at all. This woman, no this girl, was really too exquisite. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. A strong look of appreciation flashed in his eyes, and then he became calm again. "I've never been to the Sky Academy, and this is the first time I've seen this maze." His tone was very gentle, but his eyes turned to Yu Qingyan without any reluctance. He said with a smile, "Qingyan, is this your new roommate?" "Yes." Yu Qingyan nodded obediently and smiled kindly. "Brotherly, this is Sister Yuetong, Wang Yuetong." Ahem. As soon as Yu Qingyan's voice fell, Li Beitian coughed violently. He wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth awkwardly, and the fiery desire in his eyes quickly began to fade. "Yuetong, why are you here?" Ning Qianqing finally spoke. Whether it was in his tone or in his eyes, there was an unconcealable surprise. I'm here to study. Brother Qianqing, how is Uncle Ning? Wang Yuetong giggled. Her eyes sparkled, and her dimples appeared. Her whole body carried a kind of indescribable temptation and enchantment. Not bad. Is Uncle Wang in good health? Ning Qianqing seemed to not dare to look at Wang Yuetong at all, and looked away. My dad is also fine. He just met Uncle Ning in Jinling some time ago. Uncle Ning said that he hasn't seen you for more than 2 years. Wang Yuetong blinked her eyes. Ning Qianqing did not say a word and pretended not to hear anything. Wang Yuetong did not talk about this topic. She said a few words casually, and her bright eyes rested on Li Tianlan again. She moved her feet and circled around Li Tianlan several times, not hiding her interest in Li Tianlan at all. Li Tianlan did not feel anything, but Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian were so nervous that their bodies straightened and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Li Tianlan was puzzled. Just as he was about to speak, Wang Yuetong stopped and took the initiative to reach out to him. She said with a smile, "What's your name, senior brother?" "My name is Wang Yuetong." "I'm Li Tianlan." Li Tianlan reached out and shook hands with Wang Yuetong. The girl's palm was indescribably smooth and slender, and her fingers were slender. He let go of her without batting an eyelid and introduced, "This is my other roommate Li Beitian." Wang Yuetong glanced at the bamboo pole, who was covered in cold sweat, and said with a playful expression, "Your name is Li Beitian?" "Yes, I'm Li Beitian, Duke Yuetong. Just call me by my name." Wang Yuetong waved her small hand, and directly interrupted Li Beitian's words. All her interest seemed to be in Li Tianlan. She glanced at Li Tianlan again and suddenly smiled. "Senior brother Tianlan, where are you from?" "My ancestral home is Yuzhou, and I grew up in Nanyuan province." Li Tianlan was polite and courteous, but he was highly alert in his heart. He did not know everything about the outside world, but it did not mean that he was stupid. A woman like Wang Yuetong was qualified to bring disaster to a country and people wherever she was. She stopped here for a while, and many freshmen around her stopped, intentionally or unintentionally. Except for the battle with Qin Ku when he first entered the school, Li Tianlan thought that his performance was not out of line. He was low-key and mediocre, and he hid it well. In this way, it was absolutely not a good thing for a girl like Wang Yuetong to suddenly show affection to him. Moreover, judging from the attitude of Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing toward Wang Yuetong, it was enough to show that they had a powerful background. Li Tianlan did not want to get in touch with such people at all. The more he got in touch with such people, the more likely it was that his real identity would be exposed. The consequences of exposing his identity were what Li Tianlan could not afford now. Before entering the thunder-shocking realm, at least before entering the fire-flaming realm, Li Tianlan's trump card to protect himself was too limited, so he had to be careful. "Nanyuan, the scenery is beautiful, but it's too warm." "No, senior brother Tianlan, have you ever been to Beijiang?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan curiously, her beautiful big eyes blinking like the most expensive doll. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. His expression did not change, but a trace of killing intent was brewing in his heart. What did she know? Just because of the maze in front of him? "No, I haven't been there," Li Tianlan said in a flat tone. He nodded at Yu Qingyan and said, "Qingyan, we're going in. Do you want to go with us?" Yu Qingyan blushed slightly. Thinking of her grandfather's instructions, she suddenly felt a little tempted, but looking at Wang Yuetong standing aside, she shook her head subconsciously and said, "I want to go with Sister Yuetong." "You want to go with me, and also with your brother Li, right?" Wang Yuetong looked at Yu Qingyan with a smile, and reached out to pull her to her side. She said to Li Tianlan, "Senior brother Tianlan, there are only 3 of you, and we are 2 weak girls. Why don't we team up?" Li Tianlan frowned slightly, but he could not refuse. He turned his head to look at his 2 unusually silent roommates and said, "What do you think?" "It's up to you." Ning Qianqing was a little absent-minded and said subconsciously. Then he realized that he had said something wrong and quickly corrected himself. "It's up to me." Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes subconsciously, and her heart suddenly trembled. "It's up to you. It's up to me." It's too obvious that the two sentences are trying to cover up something. Could it be that Brother Qianqing really came to be someone's lackey? What makes people even more speechless is that senior brother Tianlan in front of them obviously has not figured out the situation. It's up to me too, Li Beitian said simply. Then let's go together, Li Tianlan said calmly. It's just that we are not familiar with the maze. If we affect Yuetong's ranking, I hope you won't blame us. Of course not. If we follow senior brother Tianlan, we will definitely get through the maze as soon as possible. Wang Yuetong smiled sweetly, but there was some meaning in her eyes. Sure enough, she was still testing him. Li Tianlan turned around silently, his eyes cold. This female classmate, who seemed to have a powerful background, seemed to really start to have doubts. To some extent, her suspicion was indeed right. Judging from the appearance alone, he had seen this maze before, and it was in Beijiang province. That was the first time he walked out of Li's village, out of the primeval forest, and went to the endless desert. Li Tianlan breathed softly, and took the lead to walk into the maze. The five of them turned around the first narrow path of 7 or 8 meters in the maze. After turning a corner, the road of the maze suddenly appeared in front of them. What appeared in front of them were more than a dozen intersections. The road made of the same blue bricks was 3 meters wide, spreading deep into the maze. This road went left, this road went right, this road went forward, the same road, but the direction was completely different. In front of more than a dozen intersections, countless freshmen went in and out. Some went in from the intersections, and some came back from the depths of the road. There was a lot of shouting and cursing. What the hell is this? These people are already confused at the very beginning of the road? Li Beitian looked incredulous. Wang Yuetong, who had been paying close attention to Li Tianlan's expression, also found that he was also shocked. But what did such a shock mean? She approached Li Tianlan quietly and said softly, "Senior brother Tianlan, how should we go?" "Whatever," Li Tianlan said casually, but his heart was full of emotions. The same. Almost all the same. The maze in front of them was based on the maze in Beijiang. Both the outside and the inside were the same, exactly the same. Under such circumstances, if Li Tianlan went all out, it would even take him less than 10 minutes to get out of this maze. Because he knew which way was the right way. Which way was misleading. "Go here." Li Tianlan suddenly pointed to an intersection and said calmly. Wang Yuetong suddenly froze. She said subconsciously, "Here?" If this road was right, it would be infinitely close to the exit in the end, but it would eventually go around to this position. This was a typical detour, and a super detour. "It's here." Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong and said softly, "Yuetong, is there a problem?" He naturally knew that this road was wrong, but he also wanted to dispel Wang Yuetong's suspicion of him. In the current situation, getting out of the maze as soon as possible was not the most important thing. The most important thing was not to let Wang Yuetong suspect anything. So in this maze he had decided to go as far as possible. "No." Wang Yuetong immediately came to her senses, and said with a sweet smile. "Okay, we'll go wherever you want. I'll go with you." Li Beitian laughed and put his skinny palm on Li Tianlan's shoulder casually, but he suddenly pushed Li Tianlan forward, as if he was deliberately pushing Li Tianlan forward. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat, and he did not resist this force. He followed Li Beitian and quickly took a few steps forward, keeping a distance from Wang Yuetong behind him. Ning Qianqing followed without hesitation. Yu Qingyan and Wang Yuetong also followed. In a short time, this weird team of 5 seemed to have established its core. At the forefront, Li Beitian put his hand on Li Tianlan's shoulder and almost dragged him forward. The two took the lead and turned into an intersection. Li Beitian's voice sounded directly in Li Tianlan's ear, as if he was afraid of being heard. "Tianlan, you'd better stay away from Wang Yuetong. Never, ever provoke her. Otherwise, even if the 3 of us were to join forces, we wouldn't be a match for him. Even if we brought out our backers, it wouldn't be enough. In the Sky Academy, there are not many people that I can't provoke, and even fewer people that pretending Cheng and I can't provoke. But Wang Yuetong is definitely one of them." Li Tianlan paused, glanced at Li Beitian and whispered, "What's her background?" Li Tianlan looked solemn. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said in a deep voice, "Princess Yuetong, the Wang's siren." He paused and continued. "She ranks 7th among the top 10 experts of the young generation." 7th? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and took Li Beitian into a dead end at random. Li Beitian nodded, and was about to speak when he suddenly froze. He opened his mouth wide and looked at the front, as if he had seen a ghost in the daytime. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. Li Tianlan was also stunned. In front of them was a black brick wall, the most common thing in the maze, blocking all the way forward. But in the corner of the wall, 2 people stood motionless. One was an old man, and the other was a young man and a woman. The man, who looked gentle like a middle-aged scholar, was looking at Li Beitian and Li Tianlan with a smile and said in a gentle tone, "2 students, what do you mean by 7th? Beside the middle-aged scholar, a beautiful woman full of maturity and indifference was looking at Li Tianlan and Li Beitian coldly. Patter. Chapter 16. Principal. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang. There was also Qin Ke, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. Not only Li Beitian, but even Li Tianlan also felt dizzy. They would not be surprised to see these 2 people at any time, and in any place. But to see them here at this time was a little unexpected. The maze was an extremely important place for the first internal maneuver of the freshmen. However, the principal and the deputy director of the teaching office were hiding in the blind spot of the maze without saying a word. What was the meaning of this? Was he playing hide and seek? If he hadn't heard that Zhuang Huayang was Qin Ke's grandfather, Li Tianlan would have suspected that the 2 of them had an improper relationship. "Hello, headmaster." Li Tianlan breathed gently and calmed himself down in an instant. He bowed slightly to Zhuang Huayang, then straightened up and looked at Qin Ke. He said with a smile, "Hello, Director Qin." Qin Ke snorted and stared at Li Tianlan fiercely. Zhuang Huayang nodded with a smile on his face. He looked at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at a rare treasure. It was similar to the way Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan a few minutes ago, but it was not exactly the same. Wang Yuetong's eyes were full of interest, curiosity, and playfulness. Zhuang Huayang's eyes were also full of interest, but there was a hint of understanding in them. Li Tianlan was still smiling, as if he was wearing a mask on his face, but his heart was completely tense. Did the old man in front of him know his identity? Or was it because of the fight between him and Qin Ke? But in that battle, Qin Ke didn't suffer a loss. Instead, she was seriously injured. Could it be that Zhuang Huayang deliberately blocked her here for the teacher named Zhou? Why did it have to be like this? In just a few seconds, the atmosphere in the corner of the maze, with their backs facing the green brick wall, instantly became extremely heavy and oppressive. Li Beitian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and quietly straightened his body. His eyes were focused as he stood beside Li Tianlan. He seemed to have made up his mind. Seeing this detail with her own eyes, Qin Ke's eyes suddenly froze. Footsteps could be heard behind him. Ning Qiancheng, Wang Yuetong, and Yu Qingyan followed Li Tianlan's footsteps into the blind spot at the same time. The moment they saw Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ke, the 3 of them were equally stunned. "Principal. Director Qin. Hello, headmaster." Qin Ke's expression remained unchanged. Zhuang Huayang still nodded amiably and said with a smile, "Hello, students." "Principal, why are you and Director Qin here?" Behind Li Tianlan, Wang Yuetong's beautiful face was a little blank, but she quickly glanced at Li Tianlan thoughtfully. During the entrance maneuver, 2 high-level officials of the school actually appeared to meet a group of freshmen. This kind of thing was too unusual. Intuitively, Wang Yuetong felt that it must have something to do with Li Tianlan. It was not only because Li Tianlan was very likely to have been to the most secret maze, but also because Wang Yuetong had an inexplicable intuition. Wang Yuetong had always trusted her intuition. But this time, her intuition told her that there was something wrong with Li Tianlan. This boy was too quiet. There was no sharpness, no aura. He just stood there casually. He was clearly the core, but he was so quiet that people couldn't help but ignore him. Still waters run deep. In a trance, Wang Yuetong actually had a feeling that the other party was unfathomable. Among the 5 people present at the moment, although Li Beitian and Ning Qiancheng had terrifying backgrounds, They were not enough for Zhuang Huayang to meet them in person in the maneuver. Yu Qingyan, who was similar to Zhuang Huayang's adopted granddaughter, would not let Zhuang Huayang appear in person on such an occasion. As for herself, Zhuang Huayang and some high-level officials of the Sky Academy had already met her when she entered the school, so there was no need to see her again now. The only one left was Li Tianlan, who people couldn't figure out. Sure enough, Zhuang Huayang's words once again confirmed the correctness of Wang Yuerong's intuition. I have something to communicate with Li Tianlan. I don't want to waste your precious maneuver time. Do you mind? Zhuang Huayang said with a smile. The current top 10 experts of Zhongzhou State seemed to have a good temper to a certain extent. No matter what happened, he could smile, which made people feel good at first sight. Only a fool would say that he minded. They all shook their heads, but intentionally or unintentionally, no one chose to avoid it. Since the principal did not mention it, they were naturally willing to cooperate and play dumb. Zhuang Huayang just looked at Li Tianlan with a smile, waiting for his attitude. What do you want, principal? Just say it. Li Tianlan opened his mouth and said with respect. Okay. Zhuang Huayang was still smiling, but his eyes became sharp. Li Tianlan, why did you come to the Sky Academy? This question was easy to answer, but also difficult to answer. It seemed to be asking about Li Tianlan's goal, and also asking if Li Tianlan had other purposes. Li Tianlan looked indifferent and said slowly, I don't understand what you mean, principal. Then I'll make it clear. Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes. Do you have a goal in the Sky Academy? Was he going to be like a lot of other freshmen, trying to earn credits to graduate, then wait until he graduated to be a military officer, so that he wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing? Or even have a bright future? No. Li Tianlan looked calm and looked straight at Zhuang Huayang. I want to be the first. The first? Zhuang Huayang chuckled without surprise. Every session of the Sky Academy students will stay. Some of them don't have enough credits for ordinary graduation within 3 years, and they still have half a year to make up for it. At the same time, there were also a few people who, due to luck or other special reasons, ultimately missed out on the first place that everyone wanted. These people were the strongest students in the previous cohort, and they would mix in with the new students and start all over again, competing with them. If you want to be the first, your competitors are not only the students you see, but also some of your seniors. Under such circumstances, do you have the confidence to get the first place? Yes. Li Tianlan said without hesitation in a deep voice. His voice was not high, but everyone could hear the confidence in his words. Full of confidence. You're ambitious. Zhuang Huayang smiled. So, to be the first, to become a giant, to fight for the country, to have clouds and rain with a turn of your hand. Is this your goal? Li Tianlan nodded solemnly. He did not speak, but his whole body showed a kind of determination to achieve this goal even if he died. Then I don't understand. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and sighed. With such strength, ambition, and confidence, why do you still want to deliberately keep a low profile? Li Tianlan, what on earth do you want to hide? If you want to fight for the first place, you must be outstanding in all aspects. It's hard not to attract people's attention. You are the first in everything, but you like to pretend to be weak in daily life. If others don't suspect you, who will? You are so low-key and unpredictable. Even if all of us can refrain from exploring your secrets, even if you graduate with the first place, so what? You can't get the trust of the country, and in the end, it's just a waste of effort. Is such a result good for you? Li Tianlan's body suddenly shook, and in just a moment, he was already soaked with cold sweat. Deliberately keeping a low profile, hiding himself, and not being understood, even if he graduated with the first place, so what? After the treason case, the high-level officials of Zhongzhou State have scruples. You have the ability, but you are not trusted. Then what kind of giant will you become? I don't have to ask what secrets you want to hide, but others won't? Gu Yunxia, Director Gu, is mainly responsible for the ideological education of the whole school. If you are so guilty, you will be targeted by her. Why bother? I'm not guilty. Li Tianlan flatly denied, but his heart was already in a mess. Zhuang Huayang deliberately pointed out the treason case and Gu Yunxia. Did this old man really know his identity? Did Yu Donglai tell him? This matter was so sensitive. Did Yu Donglai dare to tell Zhuang Huayang? Could Zhuang Huayang be completely trusted? Never guilty? Maybe. Zhuang Huayang smiled indifferently, and suddenly looked at Li Tianlan and asked, Li Tianlan, do you dare to believe me? Trust your headmaster. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Zhuang Huayang. The gentle mask he always wore on his face seemed to be disappearing little by little, and his eyes also became suspicious and indifferent. So what if I believe? So what if I don't believe? If you believe me, please give it a try. I guarantee with my reputation and the lives of all my family members that within a year, no matter what, I will do my best to keep you safe. Zhuang Huayang looked at the indifferent eyes in front of him with a solemn expression. He took a deep breath and continued, regardless of everyone's sudden change of expression. Of course, if you don't believe me, just pretend that I didn't say anything and we never met today. Wang Yuetong, who had been watching this drama as a bystander, quickly changed the look in her eyes, and even her breathing became a little rapid. A guarantor like Zhuang Huayang was extremely needed by anyone, even her family. But now he gave it to Li Tianlan? Why? Only Li Tianlan was still as calm as water. Headmaster, you're too serious. As the headmaster, I dare not disbelieve you, but I need a reason. A reason? Zhuang Huayang's smile was completely stretched. There are many reasons, but I can only say two. First, Boss Qin values you very much. She persuaded old Yu to let me keep you safe for a year. She and old Yu both owe me a favor. Second, I'm willing to protect you because of my respect for some other people or things. Silence. After a long silence, Li Tianlan finally opened his mouth and said in a cold voice, In that case, I also owe you a favor, headmaster. Zhuang Huayang's smile became more and more obvious. He knew that he had gotten the result he wanted from this conversation. He nodded and said with a smile, Then I'll wait and see for this maneuver. Just watch. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm and cold. Zhuang Huayang laughed and turned slightly. In front of the brick wall, a flash of lightning flashed. His and Qin Ke's figures had disappeared in an instant. Li Tianlan stood where he was, deep in thought. Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian stood on either side of Li Tianlan looking solemn. Yu Qingyan looked puzzled. Only Wang Yuetong vaguely felt that she seemed to have witnessed something. At the same time, on another road less than 30 meters away from Li Tianlan, Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ke appeared again. The air around them was violently distorted, but everything was silent. A few meters away, freshmen kept shuttling by, but no one noticed their existence. Grandpa, why do you help him like this? Qin Ke stood beside Zhuang Huayang and asked. She was not dissatisfied, but a little confused. Why? Zhuang Huayang smiled indifferently. Li Taishu and Ning Qianqing, two of the top 10 experts of the young generation, are willing to serve him. Wang Yuetong also pays so much attention to him, which has proved that Li Tianlan has now entered the sight of some big shots behind them. Why shouldn't I help such a person? That's all. Qin Ke looked at her grandpa's expression and asked seriously. Zhuang Huayang was silent for a moment. In his granddaughter's expectant eyes, he shook his head slightly and said with a solemn expression, Haven't you always wanted to ask me where I was a few days ago? Qin Ke nodded slightly. Zhuang Huayang said with a self-deprecating smile. In fact, I didn't go anywhere. I've been in the Sky Academy, watching Li Tianlan in his room. It's just that you don't know, and he didn't notice. Seeing that Qin Ke's expression instantly became extremely strange, he continued. In the past few days, he has been meditating every day. Qin Ke, have you ever seen a person who hasn't entered the 4 realms of martial arts meditate for more than 16 hours a day? That's impossible. Qin Ke said flatly. I'm now in the thundershocking realm, but the limit of my daily meditation is only 10 hours. I can't even do 16 hours. As an expert of the thundershocking realm, Qin Ke could sit still for a few days without a problem. But meditation was different. The goal of meditation was to forget oneself, and to be absolutely focused on one's will. Qin Ke was now an expert of the thundershocking realm, but she could only let her will be absolutely focused for 10 hours. If she wanted to make progress, she could only accumulate it slowly in meditation again and again. 1 minute more this time, 2 minutes more next time. And the longer she meditated, the faster she would make progress. In Chinka's current state, the limit of absolute concentration was only 10 hours. Once it exceeded this time, her will would be shaken. If she forced herself to hold on, the effect was equivalent to not making progress but going backward. It was impossible for a person who could meditate deeply for 16 hours to not enter the 4 realms of martial arts. Even a pig could enter the fire-flaming realm with such concentration. Impossible? Zhuang Huayang's smile was complicated, and so was his eyes. He looked in the direction of Li Tianlan and said softly, "Isn't there one?" At this moment, even though Qin Ke had already guessed it, she was still shocked, speechless. How is this possible? She took a deep breath and muttered to herself, "Nothing is impossible." He did not meditate deeply for 16 hours a day, but for several days in a row. I wanted to see how many days he could hold on, but unfortunately, Zhuang Huayang shook his head regretfully. Unfortunately what? Qin Ke asked subconsciously. Unfortunately, I couldn't hold on. I watched him for 3 days in a row, and I almost starved to death. He has such an identity, such talent, and such a family background. I'm willing to protect him for a year. Zhuang Huayang sighed again. Identity? Background? Qin Ke frowned and said nothing, but she was thinking about what Grandpa had found in these days. Because of Li Tianlan, Li Taishu, Ning Qiancheng, Qin Weibai, Yu Donglai, and even myself have now become the pawns of the person playing chess in the dark. Look how many forces are involved. In recent years, there seems to be a force pushing something in the dark. Now it seems to be more and more obvious. No matter who is behind Li Tianlan, what they are planning is earth-shattering. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and then smiled sarcastically. And today, that idiot Gu Yunxia mentioned the treason case again. Now it seems that this matter is likely to inadvertently help the person playing chess in the dark. It's getting more and more interesting. Qin Ke twitched the corner of her mouth and said coldly, Director Gu's performance at the entrance ceremony today is completely beneath her status. Zhuang Huayang shook his head and said, She also has no choice. She is just a vanguard and can only follow the general trend. The person behind Gu Yunxia is only plotting a murderous weapon. Everything behind Li Tianlan is really terrible when you think about it carefully. At present, there are only a few clues, but it is already turbulent. Once it fully erupts one day, how magnificent will it be? Grandpa, do you think? Qin Ke hesitated for a moment and said cautiously, Do you think all this will involve the palace master behind Qin Weibai? Or is all this secretly planned by him? As a mysterious rising figure in Huading in recent years, whether Qin Weibai had a backer in Zhongzhou state was still shrouded in mystery. But her backer in the dark world, as long as it was in public, was known to all. No. Zhuang Huayang thought for a while and shook his head very slowly. He is abroad and can't do anything. No matter how invincible he is, he can't advance or retreat freely under the muzzle of the human emperor. Neither the person holding the human emperor, nor the one behind Gu Yunxia will allow him to enter Zhongzhou state, unless he wants to die. He took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and muttered to himself, The wind is rising and the clouds are surging. Grandpa, do you remember what semi-immortal Xian Xian said a few years ago when he appeared in Yuzhou? Qin Ke suddenly said, Didn't he say that the person holding the human emperor was a saint inside and a king outside? The old guy is just deliberately mystifying things. In the face of his granddaughter, Zhuang Huayang was dismissive of the Taoist eccentric, who was close to a half-immortal in Zhongzhou state. Deliberately mystifying things? Grandpa, do you really think so? Xian Xuanzi is famous in Zhongzhou state. He doesn't speak, but once he does, will he say anything wrong? Not to mention his legendary deeds of locking the dragon vein for Zhongzhou state for 30 years. Qin Ke said disapprovingly, Why do you mention that old guy Xian Xuanzi? Zhuang Huayang was obviously a little irritable when he mentioned the famous half-immortal in Zhongzhou state. When he saw the person holding the human emperor, he said that he was a saint inside and a king outside. But Grandpa, do you remember what he said when he saw the super big shot behind Director Gu? Qin Ke said in a serious tone. Zhuang Huayang narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. When the heavenly sun appears, the catastrophe is coming. The heavenly sun will face the catastrophe. Who will face the heavenly sun? Qin Ke said word by word. Grandpa, great changes are coming in the dark world. We have to prepare early. Chapter 17. Inside the maze made of black bricks. Li Tianlan stood quietly, as if he was lost in thought. It had been more than 10 minutes since Zhuang Huayang and Qin Ke left. During these 10 minutes, Li Tianlan remained motionless and frighteningly silent. Not only him, but Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing were also silent. Their bodies were straight and they stood silently beside Li Tianlan, like two loyal guards who were firm and lifeless. Yu Qingyan was gentle and patient. She also noticed that the meeting between Zhuang Huayang and Li Tianlan was unusual, so she just stood there without saying a word. Only Wang Yuetong stood in the last row. Although she did not speak, her eyes kept moving between Li Tianlan and the other two. Her eyes seemed to rest on Li Tianlan most of the time, and the interest in her eyes grew stronger and stronger. Wang Yuetong knew that her current state was a little dangerous. Emotionally speaking, when a woman had a strong interest in a man, it often meant the beginning of a good or bad relationship. But she was just a young girl in her 20s this year. Facing Li Tianlan, a man who seemed to be full of mysteries, she could not control her curiosity. Zhuang Huayang guaranteed with his personal reputation and the lives of his family. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing followed. The support of Yu Donglai, who was known as the poison doctor and still had a certain influence in the secret service system of Zhongzhou state. What was so special about Li Tianlan that he could get so much unusual attention? Wang Yuetong was eager to make a move. She could not help but have a desire to dig out all of Li Tianlan's secrets. 20 minutes. Li Tianlan still did not move. The atmosphere in the dead corner of the maze became more and more subtle and oppressive. Although this place was a dead end, there were still several waves of freshmen who inadvertently walked here in 20 minutes. However, after seeing Li Tianlan and the others, no one caused any trouble. Since there was no way forward, everyone wisely chose to retreat. The road in the maze had just begun, but now they could not wait to jump out and attack others. They were either crazy or fools. 30 minutes. Li Tianlan still didn't move. From the beginning to the present, he seemed to have fallen into a very strange state. From head to toe, not even a hair on his body had moved. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan were a little far away and did not feel anything, but Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian were getting more and more surprised. Tianlan seems to be meditating? Li Beitian finally couldn't help but whisper. He was the closest to Li Tianlan, so he could clearly feel that Li Tianlan's breathing was getting steadier and longer, with an indescribable frequency, which was completely consistent with the state of meditation. Ning Qianqing nodded. He felt as ridiculous and shocked as Li Beitian. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan were equally shocked. Wang Yuetong took a step forward and approached Ning Qianqing. She whispered, "Is senior brother Tianlan really meditating?" "I think so," Ning Qianqing said with a wry smile, a little uncertain. It was probably the first time in the Sky Academy's decades of history that Ning Qianqing entered a meditative state at the beginning of the entrance maneuver. Martial Tao meditation required absolute concentration of the will. For the vast majority of people, they needed an extremely quiet environment to slowly focus their attention. Taking Ning Qianqing as an example, in a quiet environment, he needed at least half an hour to an hour to enter a meditative state. His state of mind was already outstanding enough among the younger generation. But what about Li Tianlan? In the maneuver, the sound of footsteps was endless. From the moment Zhuang Huayang left, he seemed to have begun to meditate. What a terrifying state of mind it took to meditate at any time. He can enter meditation in an instant. Such a state of mind is amazing. Wang Yuetong's eyes were shining, and her smile became increasingly bright and enchanting. She suddenly realized that her inadvertent curiosity seemed to have really discovered a great treasure, or rather, a talent. Li Beitian laughed bitterly and shook his head. "That's true, but this is really not a good time to meditate. So, if I'm not wrong, senior brother Tianlan should be about to break through." What the headmaster said just now was very clear. It was clear that he didn't want to have any scruples, so he chose this time to break through and improve his combat capability. There was a trace of expectation in Wang Yuetong's tone that she didn't even notice. She really wanted to see what this quiet and scary boy was like when he was arrogant. What realm do you think senior brother Tianlan is in now? Ice condensing realm at least, Li Beitian said with some uncertainty. He just said that his combat capability is similar to mine and Brother Awesome's, so he should be in the ice condensing realm. If he breaks through, will he enter the fire flaming realm? When he said this, he opened his eyes wide in disbelief. In deep meditation, he concentrated his will to the extreme, sublimated in an instant, and successfully broke through to the fire flaming realm. It sounded normal, but now Li Tianlan seemed to be less than 20 years old. There were few experts in the fire-flaming realm at this age in the entire Zhongzhou state. If Li Tianlan really succeeded in breaking through, the list of the top 10 young experts in Zhongzhou state might have to be rearranged. He's moving. Li Baiqian's heart surged. He wanted to say something, but he inadvertently saw Li Tianlan out of the corner of his eye and suddenly blurted out 2 words. Everyone's eyes instantly focused on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's posture didn't seem to change, but he seemed to be straighter than before. His vertical hands were trembling slightly, and his fingers were slowly clenching. A series of bone-cracking sounds came from his body. From top to bottom, densely packed. Li Tianlan suddenly clenched his fists and opened his eyes. In the air, an extremely sharp whistling sound suddenly rang out the moment he clenched his fist. With his clenched fist as the center, several fierce or heavy gusts of wind cut through the air. They were invisible and intangible, but their momentum was awe-inspiring. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Baiqian's mouth twitched, and he looked at Li Tianlan with a speechless face. After a while he slowly asked, "Tianlan, you broke through?" "Yes." Li Tianlan's eyes were relaxed, and he said with a smile, "Yes, I broke through to the chi-controlling realm. Not the fire-flaming realm, not the ice-condensing realm. It was the most basic chi-controlling realm." Li Beitian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His voice sounded like a moan. "Congratulations. Congratulations. Tianlan, you've really learned bad things from acting tough Chung." He didn't despise Li Tianlan's low realm, but he suddenly remembered that before they set off, Li Tianlan told him and Ning Qianqing that he was about the same as them. At that time, Li Tianlan hadn't even entered martial arts. It was indeed about the same, just about 2 realms apart. What a reserved person. He had only known acting tough Chung for a day. How could he also start to act tough? "Congratulations, everyone." Li Tianlan chuckled. He naturally knew what Li Beitian was thinking now, but he didn't bother to explain. It would be too tiring to explain the serious inconsistency between combat strength and realm. He had already made his stand to Zhuang Huayang that he would no longer keep a low profile. Whether he wanted to or not, he had to be strong to the end. At that time, Li Beitian would naturally understand his current state. Li Tianlan already knew what to do before he came. What Zhuang Huayang said just now did give him a lot of inspiration. He understood the principle of accepting good advice, but it didn't mean that he would easily change his behavior and conduct because of others' words. But Li Tianlan also knew that since Zhuang Huayang had shown up, there was not much room for him to choose. At worst, he had to keep a low profile and do things in a high profile. He was indomitable in martial arts, but it didn't mean that he didn't know when to stop. In the face of a headmaster who was likely to know his identity, if he didn't make a little compromise and change, the consequences would be unpredictable. "Qingyan," Li Tianlan suddenly spoke. He looked at Yu Qingyan and asked, "When Senior you went to visit Headmaster Zhuang, do you know what they said?" He had to know whether Zhuang Huayang knew his identity and how he knew it, because it was about Zhuang Huayang's attitude and position. "I don't know." Yu Qingyan shook her head honestly. "Grandpa never tells me about this." Li Tianlan nodded slightly and said nothing. "Senior brother Tianlan, what are you worried about?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan meaningfully and asked aloud. Although Li Tianlan's low realm surprised her, she still had a strong interest in Li Tianlan. "I just asked casually. Why are you so sensitive, junior sister Yuetong? It's not a good thing to be too curious." Li Tianlan smiled indifferently. Wang Yuetong was stunned. At this moment, she finally found that Li Tianlan was a little different from just now. At first glance, there seemed to be no change, but compared with half an hour ago, There was a hint of looming sharpness in him now. Especially the last sentence, which was soft but firm. It seemed to be an exhortation, but it could be understood as a warning, which seemed to be possible. She called him senior brother Tianlan just out of politeness, but this person actually took the opportunity to call her junior sister. The distance between them was much closer. But judging from Li Tianlan's expression, it was obvious that he didn't take her seriously. Wang Yuetong raised her delicate eyebrows slightly and said with a chuckle, "I just asked casually. Senior brother Tianlan seems to be more sensitive than me. But I think what the headmaster just said is right. If you keep a low profile and deliberately hide, how can you make those people fight for you?" She was talking about Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian, but Li Tianlan thought of those who had died for the Li family. At this moment, Li Tianlan's mind was like a tide surging. He thought of the former glory of the Li family, the long winter night and the cold and wet forest at the border, the camp on the border where too many people were unwilling to accept their fate, the vast desert and dazzling maze in Beijiang, Gu Yunxia's mean and ugly face on the rostrum, and Yu Donglai, who obviously didn't like him but was still willing to help him after so many years, and Qin Weibai. All kinds of pictures kept rotating in his mind. Li Tianlan raised the corner of his mouth and smiled brightly. Like the morning glow. That makes sense. He looked at Wang Yuetong and said with a smile, "In that case, let's go from here." He stretched out his hand and pointed at a blind spot in the maze, a blind spot that was blocked by a green brick wall. "This," Li Beitian smiled bitterly and said. "How can we go from here? Do we bump into it?" The blue brick maze was a completely enclosed structure. The walls, ceiling, and floor were all blue bricks. Although Li Beitian didn't know this maze, he recognized the blue bricks. This kind of brick came from Qinzhou province in Zhongzhou state, and was made of a special soil in the mountains, which was several times tougher than ordinary red bricks. When he came in, he smelled a kind of adhesive, and it was a military adhesive. It could be seen that the blue bricks in front of him were all held together with a super strong adhesive. According to his observation, a wall in the maze was at least 1 meter thick. Bump into it. In theory it was possible, and so could he. If he hit it with all his strength, he could. But the maze was so big, how many times could he hit it? He would die of exhaustion. "You're right. Just hit it." Li Tianlan smiled brightly. The human emperor shook gently in his sleeve and fell into his hand. Li Tianlan raised one hand, and the human emperor stretched in the air. The wind and thunder roared, and it moved forward. The wall touched the tip of the spear, and sparks flew. The blue brick wall, which was 3 meters high and at least 1 meter thick, suddenly collapsed with a loud bang, and the bricks and stones flew everywhere. Li Tianlan looked calm and stepped forward. "Smash everything, tear everything. The direction I'm moving forward is my way, my martial arts. I won't retreat until I die." Zhuang Huayang told him that if he believed in him, please give it a try. "Then I'll give it a try." The human emperor streaked across the air, and the sound was surging, with a loud bang. The second wall was smashed again when he raised his hand. Li Tianlan turned and disappeared. What kind of chi-controlling realm is this? Isn't this bullying? Li Beitian was stunned for a few seconds, and then he suddenly came to his senses and shouted in exasperation. He could also break the blue brick wall in front of him, but he needed to use all his strength. However, Li Tianlan, who was in the chi-controlling realm, broke the wall as easily as breaking glass, and hit it twice in a row without any effort. Li Beitian was already at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, and he was at least one big realm ahead of Li Tianlan, who had just broken through to the chi-controlling realm. But what about the big realm now? Was it lost? Or was it eaten by a dog? Holding Yu Qingyan's hand, Wang Yuetong quickly followed him without hesitation. When she passed by Li Beitian, she said calmly, "The 2 moves just now were all from senior brother Tianlan's own physical strength. His strength and speed are both perfect. If I'm not wrong, senior brother Tianlan should be born with divine strength and wind and thunder veins." Wind and thunder veins. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing were shocked at the same time. The so-called wind and thunder veins. One was the wind vein, and the other was the thunder vein, which was extremely rare. The internal structure of this kind of person was also different from that of most people. To be exact, There were 2 extra meridians that could spread from the arms to the legs and run through the limbs. The wind vein was born with great speed. The thunder vein was born with great strength. The gathering of wind and thunder was 1 in a billion, and it was even rarer than the experts of the invincible realm. Such a person was completely born for martial arts, and he had the capital to be invincible in the same realm, and even kill the enemies of higher realms. Not to mention the wind and thunder veins, just the wind vein or the thunder vein alone was a top talent that all the forces would fight for. Those with the wind vein were born to be assassins, and those with the thunder vein were born to be valiant generals. Such a person was completely unique in martial arts. Was Li Tianlan really a super genius with the wind and thunder veins? Princess Yuetong. Li Beitian suddenly opened his mouth and called her in a deep voice. What's wrong? Wang Yuetong paused and turned to look at Li Beitian. Tianlan really has the wind and thunder veins? Li Beitian asked in a serious tone. If this question was confirmed, then he must report it to the people behind him. As long as a warrior with the wind and thunder veins grew up, he would be a proper expert of the invincible realm in the future, and he would be much stronger than the ordinary experts of the invincible realm. In the dark world, there were divine and holy lists that listed the experts of the invincible realm in the world. The divine list was ranked before the holy list, and even the last expert of the invincible realm on the divine list was stronger than the first on the holy list. This was enough to show that even the experts of the invincible realm had different levels. An expert of the invincible realm with the wind and thunder veins could at least be on the divine list. This was absolutely not a trivial matter. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered with a strange fiery look. She nodded and said, most likely. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other, both looking excited. Wang Yuetong's answer to the question of whether Li Tianlan had the wind and thunder veins was absolutely authoritative. Because this siren of the Wang family herself was a genius with the wind vein, and she had a brother who also had the wind and thunder veins. Wang Xingxiao, 23 years old, half a step to the thunder-shocking realm. He ranked first among the top 10 young experts of Zhongzhou State, along with another talented young heavenly son. Boom! The sound of the blue wall collapsing rang out for the 3rd time. Hurry up, follow them, Ning Qianqing said, and they directly rushed in the direction of Li Tianlan. In front of them, Li Tianlan held the silver spear in his hand and walked steadily forward, without retreating or looking back. Forward! Raise the spear! Break the wall! The blue walls in front of Li Tianlan were broken one after another, but his movements were steady and coherent. 1 wall, 5 walls, 15 walls. Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian followed behind Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan walked behind them. The 5 of them walked in the maze, smashing their way through in a crushing manner. Behind the 5 of them, more and more freshmen gathered behind the 5 of them. If it were you, how many walls could you break? Li Beitian glanced at Ning Qianqing and asked. 15? 20? That's almost the limit. What about you? Ning Qianqing smiled bitterly and glanced at Li Tianlan, who did not show any signs of fatigue after breaking 15 walls in a row. He could not tell what he was feeling. Was the legendary wind and thunder veins really so terrifying? Li Tianlan was already so powerful when he was in the Qi-controlling realm. If the young heavenly son of the Wang family who had wind and thunder veins, and was about to enter the thunder-shocking realm made a move, how terrifying would it be? Me too. Li Beitian looked serious and said, we are almost the same. After 20 walls, your willpower should not be able to keep up, but my physical strength can't keep up. Wang Yuetong followed them quietly, but she did not hear what they were talking about. Her clear eyes, which seemed to be able to reflect everything, were fixed on Li Tianlan's back from beginning to end, not wanting to leave him at all. In her sight, it was an ordinary figure, not tall or burly but ordinary. But at this moment, as he moved forward in this enclosed maze, it seemed that all the obstacles would be completely smashed into ashes under his silver spear. Feng Feiyun walked unstoppable. Only he moved forward between heaven and earth. He was a man with an ordinary appearance and figure, but at this time, his every move exuded a kind of confidence and style that looked down on the world. His charm was unparalleled. Every time he made a move, there was a myriad of phenomena, which could be called peerless. Wang Yuetong's eyes were blurred and she was intoxicated. The sound of the blue wall collapsing in front of them continued, and the whole maze seemed to be shaking violently. It was the 40th minute since they entered the maze. Chapter 18. The further Li Tianlan went in the maze, the more certain he was that the maze he was in now was an imitation of the maze that had almost tortured him to madness in Beijiang. This should be a simplified version of the maze in Beijiang. The entrance was exactly the same as the beginning section, and the scale was roughly the same. But when he reached the middle section, Li Tianlan keenly discovered that the forks that were the easiest for people to get lost in had all disappeared, and turned into a straight path. In this way, the complexity of the interior of the maze had suddenly become several times simpler. Li Tianlan had stayed in the maze in Beijiang for nearly a year and a half. To exaggerate a little, in that maze he could almost find the exit with his eyes closed. Now he was in this simplified version of the maze. After removing the forks that were the easiest for people to take detours, every vein of the entire maze was extremely clear in his mind. The 40th minute. 35 walls were broken. Although Li Tianlan still had strength to spare, he stopped breaking the walls. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing followed him all the way. Behind them were Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan. Now that Li Tianlan stopped, the other four stood directly in the passage and looked at each other. At this moment, the 35 consecutive blue walls behind him had been completely broken. The process did not take long, but every path in the maze was almost exactly the same. They turned left and right, forward and backward. Even Wang Yuetong, who knew the maze better than anyone else, could not tell where they were. The others were even more confused. Tianlan. Li Beitian waited for a while and looked at Li Tianlan, who was standing still, and subconsciously called him. Let's go here. Li Tianlan stood in the middle of the passage, pointed to his right and said slowly. Among the 5 people present, including the group of freshmen behind him, Li Tianlan was undoubtedly the only one who could determine his position. So he was very sure that the exit of the maze would appear in front of everyone as soon as the blue wall in front of him was broken. But after calculating the time, he gave up this seemingly domineering, but actually not smart enough approach. The maze was diamond-shaped. From the entrance, the further one went, the larger the space, which also meant that the chances of the freshmen meeting each other were smaller. But once the second half was close to the exit, the further one went, the smaller the space became. In the end, there might only be a few crossings, so the chances of meeting other students were higher. The possibility of a fight was almost 100%. Li Tianlan never dared to underestimate other people's IQ. Now it had been nearly 50 minutes since they entered the entrance, and the difficulty of the maze in front of them was not as complicated as he had imagined. Those with better brains should be very close to the exit by now, either by luck or calculation. And the first batch of people to approach the exit would undoubtedly be the strongest among the freshmen. What kind of scene would it be when a small portion of the strongest who had a competitive relationship and their own pride met together? Although Li Tianlan didn't mind being high profile, he was not stupid. Zhuang Huayang had made it clear that the maneuver would last for 5 hours, through the maze and a forest. That was to say, the maze was only the first half of the maneuver. In the first maneuver after entering the school, if they could save the most combat power for the final sprint, no one would refuse it. If there were fewer battles at the exit, Li Tianlan would be very happy. He didn't mind being high profile, but what he cared about most were credits and results. As long as the results could satisfy him, the process was not important at all. So the path he chose at this time was not the closest to the exit, but the farthest. If they walked along this path, it would take at least 10 minutes to reach the exit if they were not in a hurry. The figures of the 5 people turned a corner in the maze, and then disappeared. Behind them, a large number of freshmen who followed the 5 people looked at each other. After hesitating for a moment, they quickly dispersed. Some left in the opposite direction of Li Tianlan, some chose to continue walking with Li Tianlan, and some disappeared from other intersections. In this maze, they had no idea where they were and could only make decisions based on intuition. Some of the people who continued to follow Li Tianlan undoubtedly had the most accurate intuition, but a little hesitation made them miss the opportunity again. When they followed Li Tianlan around the corner, Li Tianlan and the other 4 people were no longer in sight. What appeared in front of them were 3 identical, empty passages. Senior brother Tianlan has the wind and thunder veins. Congratulations! This is the fortune of Zhongzhou State. In time, I'm afraid there will be another invincible person in Zhongzhou State. Even now, senior brother Tianlan makes me look at you with new eyes. In the empty passage, Wang Yuetong directly passed Li Beitian and Ning Qiancheng, and walked beside Li Tianlan with a smile. She was very close to Li Tianlan, but she did not have any physical contact with his body, keeping an imperceptible bottom line. The two walked side by side. Wang Yuetong tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan. Her limpid eyes were intoxicated with a trace of admiration and envy. It was hard to tell whether she was sincere or not. How can you be sure that I have wind and thunder veins, junior sister Yuetong? Li Tianlan glanced at her and asked with a gentle smile. Arrogance. Arrogance. At such a close distance, Wang Yuetong finally felt the other emotions under Li Tianlan's calmness and gentleness. It was a kind of pride that seemed to look down on all the women in the world. The casual glance just now made Wang Yuetong feel an obvious sense of frustration. A strange emotion gently rippled in her heart. Wang Yuetong bit her red lips, and then her smile became sweeter. She was the kind of enchanting stunner, whose every frown and smile could charm a large number of men, and even men. Now she deliberately befriended Li Tianlan. In her sweet smile, the whole passage seemed to be filled with a kind of youthful charm. Senior brother, are you testing me? I have the wind vein, so I am very sensitive to speed. Coincidentally, I have a brother who also has the wind and thunder veins. When he moves, he is exactly the same as senior brother. So I was sure at first sight. Oh. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wang Yuetong. Those who had the wind vein were born assassins. They were born with amazing speed and flexibility. If they did not die prematurely, they could at least reach the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, and even have the chance to be invincible. Such a talent was indeed amazing. But what interested him more was her brother. In the dark world, those who had the wind or thunder veins were already rare. And those who had the wind and thunder veins were even rarer. They were said to be 1 in 100 years. Now that he had just arrived at the Sky Academy, he heard the news of another person with the wind and thunder veins, which suddenly made him feel that the wind and thunder veins were a little worthless. How old is your brother this year? What realm is he in? Wang Yuetong wrinkled her delicate little nose. The simple action suddenly made her look more playful. When she mentioned her brother, her smile became more brilliant and proud. Obviously, the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. 23 years old. He has now surpassed the peak of the fire-flaming realm, and is about to enter the thunder-shocking realm. In the same realm, my brother has fought hundreds of times and has never been defeated. No one in the younger generation is his match. Li Tianlan's pupils contracted slightly. At the age of 23, a person who was half a step to the thunder-shocking realm with the wind and thunder veins would be the most dazzling genius in any era. If he could successfully graduate from the Sky Academy, achieve his goal and grow up, Wang Yuetong's brother would definitely be his strong rival in the future. I also admit that Wang Shengshao does have the capital to be invincible. But isn't it a little exaggerated to say that no one in the younger generation is his match? Li Baiqian's somewhat sour voice sounded behind Li Tianlan. Wang Yuetong squinted her beautiful eyes and turned her head to look back. The originally youthful and enchanting peerless beauty suddenly had a kind of pride and majesty that people couldn't look at directly. What? You're not convinced? Do you think you're my brother's match? Why are you angry, Miss Yuetong? I'm just telling the truth. Of course, I'm no match for your brother. But if he's really invincible in the younger generation, why should he be ranked first among the top 10 young experts with another young heavenly son? Li Beitian seemed to be extremely scrupulous about Wang Yuetong, and said with a wry smile. Humph, it's just a random ranking made by a bored person. My brother doesn't care about it. Gu Hanshan can be ranked with my brother because he didn't provoke my brother. Otherwise, he would have been beaten into a pig's head. Wang Yuetong looked proud. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Li Tianlan calmly changed the topic and said with a smile, Everyone, I've been hearing you talk about the top 10 young experts, but I've never heard of this list before. Can anyone introduce it to me? Qingyan, go ahead. Wang Yuetong pulled Yu Qingyan over and said. In front of them was a group of 5. Whether Li Tianlan knew it or not, it was a fact that 3 of them were on the list of the top 10 young experts. As far as Yu Qingyan was concerned, her position was completely neutral, lest some shameless people would raise their status. In Wang Yuetong's opinion, in Wang Yuetong's view, Li Beitian was very suspicious. It's just hearsay. There are many things that can't be confirmed. Yu Qingyan's pretty face blushed. She was really too shy. Her big eyes blinked, and she looked a little flustered under the attention of several people. It's okay. Just tell us what you heard. Wang Yuetong touched Yu Qingyan's hair and said with a smile. Yeah, I'm just asking casually. I just want to see who the top young talents of Zhongzhou State are. Li Tianlan smiled and nodded to Yu Qingyan. Yu Qingyan blushed again. She followed Li Tianlan and whispered, the top 10 experts of the young generation are mainly ranked for experts under the age of 25. They are ranked every year. Although they are not very authoritative, most people believe in them. Li Tianlan nodded. 25 years old was very interesting. Because in martial arts, 25 years old was a threshold. Whether one could cross the ice-condensing realm and enter the fire-flaming realm at this age, or not would largely determine one's future achievements. Of course, there were many late bloomers in any period, but such examples were too few to be representative at all. The first one is Wang Shengxiao, the heir of the Wang family. He has wind and thunder veins, and is almost invincible in the same realm. At the age of 23, he is already an expert half a step to the thunder-shocking realm. And the one who ranks first with Wang Shengxiao is Gu Hanshan, the young master of Kunlun City. He has the heavenly king heart, and his realm is roughly the same as Wang Shengxiao's. His combat capability should also be roughly the same. When Yu Qingyan said this, she secretly glanced at Wang Yuetong, for fear that Sister Yuetong would be angry. But Wang Yuetong looked calm, and didn't seem to be dissatisfied at all. Kunlun City? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and said in a doubtful tone, but with a trace of coldness that even he himself didn't notice. Kunlun, surnamed Gu Guyunxia. At this moment, some kind of inspiration seemed to explode in Li Tianlan's mind, and his mood was indescribably complicated. Yes, Kunlun City is now the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. There are currently 4 invincible realm experts in Zhongzhou State, and 2 of them are in Kunlun City. Yu Qingyan said obediently. 2 invincible realm experts? Both surnamed Gu? The coldness in Li Tianlan's eyes flashed away. He twitched the corner of his mouth and asked in a stiff tone. The power center of the special warfare system Kunlun City. Li Tianlan was a little annoyed and self-deprecating. Many years ago, Zhongzhou State didn't have the name Kunlun City at all. Even if it did, it was not the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. At that time, there was only one core of the entire special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, and that was the Li family. The Li family of Kunlun that belonged to him. Was there a reason for this that was worth pondering? Chapter 19. Yes, they're all surnamed Gu. Yu Qingyan glanced at Li Tianlan in surprise and answered softly. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, nodded and said with a smile, "Go on." Yu Qingyan nodded and said in a lighter tone, "The second one is Jiang Shangyu, the only son of the Jiang family in Beijiang, Zhongzhou State. He has the exquisite bone, and is currently in the fire-flaming realm. He is currently 24 years old, and is studying at the Deep Sea Academy. The third one is a woman, Dongqing Rushi, the second daughter of the Dongqing family in Zhongyuan province. She is the second daughter of Marshal Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Control Corps. She is 19 years old, and is currently in the fire-flaming realm. It is said that, like Jiang Shangyu, she is also a genius with the exquisite bone." Li Tianlan smiled. As Yu Qingyan revealed the top 10 young experts one by one, he really felt that he had underestimated the heroes in the world before. Wind and thunder veins, heavenly king heart, and exquisite bone. Those who were born with these were real martial arts geniuses. Wind and thunder veins were born with great speed and strength. Heavenly king heart was the body's quick response, and the mind was far beyond ordinary people. In terms of meditation, those who had heavenly king heart had a greater advantage than anyone else. Compared with others in the same realm, their cultivation progress could be said to be rapid. Having Heavenly King Heart was equivalent to getting the ticket to the invincible realm at birth. The effect of the exquisite bone was slightly weaker, but it was only slightly weaker. Geniuses with the exquisite bone had extremely strong learning and comprehension abilities. If they were lucky, they might not necessarily be weaker than those with the wind lightning veins and Heavenly King Heart. Among the top 10 experts of the young generation, only the top 3, for people made Li Tianlan feel a strong pressure. The fourth one is Li Taishu, the great void sword master of Mount Shu. He is 23 years old, and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. In nearly 300 years, only 2 great void sword masters appeared in Mount Shu. In the rest of the time, the great void sword was always in a masterless state. However, the 2 great void sword masters both became experts of the invincible realm. Therefore, in many people's eyes, this great void sword master is also likely to become an expert of the invincible realm. Behind him, Li Baitian's mouth twitched fiercely and his face was full of pain. Damn, what does it mean by a certain possibility? Is it 100%? Li Tianlan continued to nod. He had heard from his grandfather that Mount Shu Jade Pool and Azura Path were the main martial arts forces with a long history in Zhongzhou State. In terms of swordsmanship, Mount Shu could be said to be the best in the world. It was not that Mount Shu was the best in swordsmanship, but that Mount Shu's swordsmanship was rich. Mount Shu had a sword will. It was magnificent, and the sword will soared into the sky. This sentence had been circulating in the world since the first appearance of Mount Shu, and it was still being talked about enthusiastically. As for the myriad phenomena of the Mount Shu sword qi, they were basically all concentrated on the 4 sword masters of Mount Shu. The 4 famous swords of Mount Shu were Nirvana, Phantom, Yin Yang, and Taishu. Each sword had a different sword intent. Among them, the Taishu sword's sword intent was the most ethereal. To be able to make the Taishu sword recognize him as its master. Li Taishu was indeed extraordinarily talented. Ranked 5th is Ning Qiancheng, an officer of the Border Control Corps. He is 23 years old, and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. Yu Qingyan paused and glanced at Ning Qiancheng, who was still calm. She wanted to say something, but changed to the next one. Ranked 6th is Qi Zhaoxi, the young master of Azura Path. He is 22 years old, and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. Sister Yuetong is ranked 7th. The 8th is Zhongli Wuxin, the adopted son of General Chen Songlin, the dean of the Deep Sea Academy. He is the left hand of the young master of Shadow Sect. He is good at defense because of his inheritance, but he is not good at attacking, so he is ranked 9th. All 3 of them are 20 years old, and at the peak of the ice-condensing realm. What about the 10th? Li Tianlan waited for a while. Seeing Yu Qingyan was silent, he asked casually. Because 2 of them are tied for the first place, the top 10 experts are only ranked 9th. There is no 10th. Yu Qingyan chuckled. She hesitated. Then she continued, but if there is another one, Brother Li is the best candidate. Although your realm is a little lower, your combat capability is definitely not worse than that of the top 10 experts. You broke 35 walls in a row. That's awesome. Junior sister Qingyan, you flatter me. Li Tianlan laughed casually. He was not interested in the ranking. It did not add credits. What was the use of it? Moreover, if it was only the 10th, in his opinion, it was better not to fight for it. It might be a glory for others, but for him, it was nothing to be happy about. I think Qingyan is right. Although your realm is not high, with such combat capability, it is natural for you to be ranked among the top 10 experts. In time, you may not be much worse than my brother. Wang Yuetong chuckled softly. She looked at Li Tianlan with her big bright eyes with a trace of strange emotion. Senior brother Tianlan, if you are interested, I would like to introduce you to my brother. You have the same physique. Although my brother is ahead of you for the time being, it will be good for you to communicate with each other. Li Baitian and Ning Qiancheng looked at each other subconsciously. Wang Yuetong's attitude toward Li Tianlan seemed to have changed more and more obviously. An absurd attitude rose in their hearts. But the more they thought about it, the more likely it was. Although they did not know the specific origin of Li Tianlan, they were sure that Li Tianlan was definitely not a commoner. He definitely had support behind him. This force might not be comparable to that of the Wang family, but Li Tianlan had the wind and thunder veins. In the future, he would definitely be an invincible realm expert. He was definitely worthy of being roped in by the Wang family. Wang Yuetong's attitude. Did she want to draw Li Tianlan to the Wang family as a son-in-law? This did not seem to be something that they could not figure out. The Wang family had been passed down for hundreds of years, and its reputation had never declined. Such a family valued the relationship between young men and women not for true love, but for potential and value. But if Li Tianlan really became the son-in-law of the Wang family, would it be a good thing or a bad thing? Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing frowned, and did not speak for a while. In their minds, if Wang Yuetong really had such an idea, Li Tianlan had no room to refuse. Not to mention how grand the Wang family's power was, the charm of Wang Yuetong, the siren of the Wang family, was irresistible. If he had such a girlfriend, he would not only have face but also bring honor to his ancestors. He could even say that he would not have to work hard for a few lifetimes. Your brother can be called the heavenly son of the generation. I can't compare with him. Forget it. Li Tianlan's indifferent voice sounded in her ears. He did not seem to realize anything at all, so he refused indifferently. Well, let's talk about it later. Anyway, there will be plenty of opportunities. Wang Yuetong stared at Li Tianlan for a while with her eyes wide open. Then she smiled sweetly and said no more. Li Tianlan's expression did not change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. After this corner ahead, they should be at the exit of the maze. Wang Yuetong walked beside Li Tianlan, almost touching him. She said with a smile, "Senior brother Tianlan." The five of them turned the corner. Wang Yuetong's tone suddenly stopped. In their sight, the entrance of the maze appeared in front of them. A group of Sky Academy students in camouflage clothes gathered in front of the few narrow doors that could be used to enter and exit the maze. There was blood at the exit. About 6 or 7 freshmen of the Sky Academy were also lying on the ground. At this moment, in front of the freshmen lying on the ground, several other people were walking over. They took off the wristwatches on their wrists, which were centralized communication, positioning, navigation, calling, scanning, recording and other functions issued by the Sky Academy. Then they dragged their twitching bodies and directly threw them out of the maze. The wristwatches were finally gathered in the hands of a young man sitting at the centermost door. The man was about 26 or 27 years old. He was tall and sturdy. He sat there casually, but he had an aggressive aura. His appearance could be considered handsome, but his ruthless and cruel temperament destroyed the first impression he gave people. At this moment, he casually took the wristwatches he took from the hands of several freshmen and threw them on the table. His smile was unusually cruel. When Li Tianlan and others walked to the exit, he just glanced at them casually. The moment he saw Wang Yuetong, the young man suddenly froze. He sat up straight subconsciously, and his eyes began to shine. Not only him, but almost all the men blocking the exit stared at Wang Yuetong with greedy faces. Another wave of freshmen. They are not slow, but unfortunately, they are useless. The young man took a deep breath, slowly leaned back in the chair behind him, crossed his legs, and pointed at Li Tianlan with a lazy face. You guys take off the credit statistical tables on your wrists and give them to me. Then get out of here. Well, the 2 junior sisters come over, and let me kiss each of them. Then I will let you pass. How about it? Chapter 20. Domineering, unreasonable, vicious and cruel. The blood on the ground had not yet dried, and the exit of the maze was filled with a faint smell of blood. The students blocking the entrance glanced at the 5 people who had just arrived at the exit with a grim smile, their eyes constantly changing. When they looked at Li Tianlan, Ning Qianqing, and Li Beitian, they did not hide the ferocity in their eyes at all. But when their eyes fell on Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan, they suddenly became fiery. It could not be said that these students had poor self-control. Yu Qingyan was a little better, but the appearance of Wang Yuetong directly made them lose all resistance. This was truly a little demon. She had stunning facial features, a faintly discernible smile, and an exquisite figure. From head to toe, there was not a single part of her that wasn't beautiful, and there was not a single part that wasn't alluring. Under the stimulation of the fresh blood, All the male students were already in a state of impulsiveness, suddenly seeing such a seductive beauty that seduced their bones. How could he control himself? Not only them, but also Li Tianlan's heart was boiling at the thought of Wang Yuetong's bright red lips when he heard that she wanted to kiss him. But when he heard the last sentence, he frowned subconsciously. If he dared not stick out his tongue, he would cut off his tongue? Those words were truly disgusting. Therefore, he directly shook his head, looked at the young man who was surrounded by a group of people at the door, and rejected in a clear and calm voice. No. Not to mention whether Yu Qingyan and Wang Yuetong were willing to go up and be kissed. Even if they asked them to take off the credit counting forms and give them to them, Li Tianlan would not agree. The credit counting form was not a form, but the wristwatch on their wrists that had been issued to them since the first day of school. In the next 3 years, this would be one of their most important equipment. The student code of the Sky Academy clearly stipulated that once the wristwatch was lost, they could get a new one, but 50 credits would be deducted. Every new student was given 50 credits, but these credits were related to the basic necessities of life in the first month of school. They had no control over the credits, so if they lost the wristwatch and wanted to replace it, their credits would go into the negatives. This was something that no one was willing to bear. No. The young man with his legs crossed raised his eyebrows slightly, and his eyes became more and more gloomy. He looked up at Li Tianlan, waved his hand casually and said with a smile, "You're so confident. What are you waiting for? Go up and take a look. Where did they get their confidence from? Remember, you have to love your junior sisters, and teach those junior brothers who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson." As he spoke, the dozen students who had been surrounding the young man moved their feet. The next second, 10 students rushed toward Li Tianlan at the same time. The young man's behavior seemed no different from that of an ordinary playboy, but when his subordinates moved, it immediately became extremely unusual. The 10 of them moved in unison, and their charging posture was completely identical. Before they even rushed forward, they had already vaguely formed a simple formation. Time was precious in the maneuver. Who had the time to dawdle? Li Tianlan smiled coldly and took a step forward, shielding the other 4 behind him. The human emperor was in his hands. 10 students of the Sky Academy swooped down. 5 meters. 3 meters. Li Tianlan moved forward again. The 10-centimeter-long human emperor was suddenly swung, and the human emperor was directly elongated. However, this time the bloody spearhead at the front of the human emperor did not extend, so the silver human emperor directly became a long rod about 2 meters long. Li Tianlan held the rod with both hands and smashed it at the head of the nearest student. In the sealed space, there was a sudden wind. The chi-controlling realm became the wind, and the invisible strength roared with the fall of the human emperor. Wild and fierce. Chi-controlling realm? Such a fierce chi-controlling realm? The expression of the student who rushed toward Li Tianlan changed greatly. The first thought in his mind was not to attack, but to take the initiative to defend. His hands instinctively crossed in front of his chest, and the terrible power surged in front of him at the moment when his hands were crossed. The moisture in the air instantly condensed in the shock of the power, and turned into a shield that could protect his head. He held the shield with both hands, took a standard defensive posture, and raised the shield to meet the silver long rod in Li Tianlan's hand. The raging and roaring strength chi came from far to near, from top to bottom, and as the silver long rod fell, it had completely condensed in front of the long rod in an instant. Crack! In the subtle but horrifying sound, when the silver long rod was half a meter away from the ice shield had been completely torn by the invisible strength chi, and the ice chips were flying. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed, and the human emperor, which weighed more than 50 kilograms, was lifted up. In an instant, most of the force was removed, but the rod still fell on the head of the opponent. Bang! Blood burst out, and the sound of the skull breaking could be heard clearly. The student who rushed to Li Tianlan first did not even have the slightest resistance under the rod. He knelt straight on the ground and passed out on the spot. F***CKU. An almost crazy roar rang out. As soon as the opponent in front of Li Tianlan knelt down, several sharp icicles came from behind and directly covered his upper body. The opponent seemed to have forgotten the rule of no killing in this maneuver. As soon as he made a move, it was a ruthless killing move. Li Tianlan's expression was cold and did not change at all. Around him, the wind whistled. The qi-controlling realm became the wind, and when he moved, the wind moved. He used a spear and a rod, but at this moment, Li Tianlan was surrounded by the pure sword intent, whistling and echoing endlessly. He took a step forward. The air around him twisted wildly with his movements, and countless airflows surrounded him. The icicles whistled to him, but before they hit him, they were chopped into pieces by the sword intent and strength around him. Fast. Each of Li Tianlan's movements was extremely clear, but as fast as lightning. With the wind and thunder veins, he had a much greater advantage than ordinary people in terms of strength and speed. When he took the initiative to attack, his attack was almost unstoppable. Behind the icicles, before the second student who attacked him continued to attack, Li Tianlan had already jumped up and swept his long spear. The strength that seemed to have dissipated just now condensed in front of the human emperor again. One strike. Still one strike. Li Tianlan wantonly waved the human emperor and casually swept it. The rod directly hit the opponent's waist. The second student's body was directly sent flying and smashed on the blue wall 4 or 5 meters away. Boom. Everything at the exit of the maze seemed to be shaking violently. The blue wall, which was extremely tough and could only be broken by a full blow from an expert in the ice-condensing realm, had dense cracks. The body of the student who was swept away by Li Tianlan's rod was embedded in the wall, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The momentum of Li Tianlan's rod was not over. The human emperor tore the air and continued to sweep. His whole body seemed to be driven by the silver rod in his hand, and he directly rushed in the direction of Yu Qingyan. His strides were large, and between the movements, it gave people a sense of suffocating oppression. Bang! The 2-meter-long human emperor arrived in a flash. In front of Yu Qingyan, 2 students were attacking. One of them had just jumped up when he was directly swept in the leg by the rod, and was directly sent flying. It was like playing badminton. At that moment, this thought came to the minds of everyone who saw this scene. The freshman holding the silver rod was like holding a racket. With a casual wave, he sent his opponent flying far away. Seeing that his companion was directly sent flying, the other student suddenly dared not to fight anymore. He suddenly exerted his strength and pulled away from Li Tianlan. "Thank you, brother Li." Yu Qingyan smiled sweetly. Li Tianlan shook his head and said, "We're on the same side. Don't mention it." He turned his head and glanced at the battlefield, just in time to see Wang Yuetong, who was nearby, kick out. Wearing delicate canvas shoes, her delicate little foot directly smashed an ice wall in front of her, and kicked a student behind the ice wall into the air. At this moment, Wang Yuetong's expression was cold and proud. She was incomparably gorgeous, and her whole body was filled with a kind of awe-inspiring aura. She was cold and arrogant like a queen. Beside Wang Yuetong, Li Beitian was still laughing and laughing, but there was no opponent in front of him. There was only an ice sword floating beside him. The ice sword kept rising and falling around his bamboo-like figure, and the sword intent was ethereal and distant. Ning Qianqing also stopped fighting. A student was lying in front of him, and the other student who attacked him had escaped to the side, and was confronting him from a distance. The whole scene was quiet. There was more blood on the ground again, but this time, it was not the blood of the freshman. 10 elites in the ice-condensing realm rushed up, but in less than half a minute, 8 of them were down. Only 2 could still stand, but they had also lost the courage to continue fighting. The young man sitting in front of the door in the middle stopped laughing. His smile disappeared, and he stared at the 5 freshmen who had given him too much surprise. His expression was cruel, and his eyes were full of anger. This batch of freshmen is really surprising. Before they even entered the school, they had already beaten their seniors to the ground. After a full half a minute of silence, the young man sat up straight and said in a cold tone with a smile, "You're not freshmen?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked. He did not put away the human emperor in his hand, but held it tightly in his hand, ready to fight at any time. "They're the seniors of the last year." Ning Qianqing suddenly walked up and squinted at the young man with a cold expression. He said slowly, "They will also participate in the entrance maneuver, but the task is different from ours. And the credits are also different. Oh, I was wondering who was so awesome. It turns out that it's Drunbility-chung. Haha, let me introduce him to you. This is Brother Drunbility-chung, one of the top 10 experts of the young generation. His skill of Drunbility is much better than his strength. Am I right, Drunbility-chung? As soon as Ning Qianqing's voice fell, a sharp and mocking voice rang out from the other side. Everyone could hear the sarcasm in the voice. The young man with a cold expression sat motionless. Two figures who looked about 26 or 27 years old walked up to him and stood on either side of him. They were a man and a woman. The woman had a voluptuous figure. Although she was wearing a camouflage uniform, it was obvious that she had changed it to fully reflect her figure. Her long hair was dyed a bewitching purple, and her face was full of mature charm. She was very attractive. At first glance, her temperament was similar to Wang Yuetong's. However, upon closer inspection, there were some differences. Wang Yuetong was also enchanting and charming, but everyone could feel the pride and reserve under her charming appearance. The woman who appeared at this time, however, had an indescribable coquettish charm. She looked very amorous, but no matter how one looked at her, she seemed a little pretentious. The person who appeared with her was a plain-looking man with a pair of triangular eyes that revealed a trace of wretchedness and viciousness. At this moment, he was looking at Ning Qianqing with a cold and twisted smile. Ning Qianqing did not even look at him and continued. Just now, the headmaster said that every batch of students would stay behind. Some do it to supplement their credits, while some do it to fight for another chance. The former do it out of helplessness, while the latter do it out of unwillingness. They were originally one of the strongest teams in the previous batch, but after graduation, they did not obtain the quota to establish their own force, so they have to start all over again. These senior students' mission is different from ours. They are carrying out a hunting mission, and their targets are the freshmen. They will collect the credits in our hands, and the more they collect, the more credits they will receive. Ning Qianqing paused, sneered, and continued. And if I'm not wrong, it is not just the exit of the maze. When we walk out of the maze, I'm afraid there will be similar hunting teams in the woods outside. The senior students collected the credits of the freshmen to obtain credits. In order not to have their credits deducted, the freshmen would risk their lives to keep their credits. In the Sky Academy, where there was a competitive atmosphere everywhere, such a thing was normal. What about the scores? Li Tianlan asked seriously. Headmaster Zhuang Huayang only recruited the top 50 students who completed the maneuver, but the freshmen and the senior students had different maneuver missions. In this way, the advantage of the senior students who were more familiar with the environment was indeed eliminated. But how were the freshmen and the senior students differentiated among the top 50? It's the same. The hunting mission of the senior students has a number requirement, which can be more, but they also need to complete the maneuver by the pool. After completing the number of kills required by the school, they can go directly to the pool. They have to compete with the freshmen for this ranking. Ning Qianqing shook the wristwatch on his wrist and continued. As for this, if you collect more, you will get extra credits. But if you miss the top 50 because of collecting this, you will only be rewarded with credits, no matter how much you collect, and you will not be assigned to a class. Li Tianlan nodded slightly. Although such a rule could not be said to be absolutely fair, it had achieved the best balance in all aspects. What? Acting tough, Chung? Don't you dare to talk to me? Aren't you good at acting tough? Come on, act tough for everyone to see. How about it? The young man who mocked Ning Qianqing as soon as they met felt that he was ignored, so he became angry from embarrassment and continued to provoke him. Li Tianlan finally turned his head and glanced at him. Then he said impatiently, "Who is that idiot who laughs like a pervert?" Laughing like a pervert? Idiot? The young man with a twisted smile suddenly looked livid. Just a lackey. Ning Qianqing looked disdainful, and his eyes were full of contempt. Do you know them? Li Tianlan looked at Ning Qianqing and asked. They are from the Lu family of Huating, a former giant family with deep roots. Ning Qianqing took a deep breath and nodded. The one in the middle is Lu Dongqiao, the eldest grandson of the Lu family, who has entered the fire-flaming realm. The woman is Lu Dongyu, also an expert in the fire-flaming realm. They are brother and sister, and when they work together, they are invincible in the fire-flaming realm. As for the other one, he is Tan Xilai, also an expert in the fire-flaming realm. His father is Tan Qinghua, the deputy commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations in Zhongzhou State. Ning Qianqing looked at the three young men and women gathered at the door, and introduced them one by one. Tan Xilai suddenly burst out in anger and sneered. Lackey. Who can make me, Tan Xilai, a lackey? Who deserves it? Dong Chao and I are as close as brothers. Who do you think you are? How dare you judge me? Do you really think that being one of the top 10 experts of the young generation is enough for you to act tough? No matter how powerful you are, you used to be defeated by me. Other than the fact that I can't beat you in acting tough, you're nothing but trash in my eyes. Ning Qianqing, who was humiliated, was not angry at all. He looked at Tan Xilai and said coldly, You did defeat me, but do you want to win again? I can give you a chance here. That's enough. Stop talking. Lu Dongchao suddenly said. Tan Xilai, who was about to accept Ning Qianqing's challenge, snorted with an ugly face and said no more. Lu Dongchao looked thoughtfully at the 5 freshmen in front of him. After a moment of silence, he said slowly, You are not weak. No wonder you are so confident. I can give you a chance. I don't want your credit table and let you go. What do you think? Say it. Li Tianlan said coldly. I can't let you go for hurting my brother. Now the 5 of you, kneel down and join the flames of war. I'll pretend that nothing happened. What do you think? Lu Dongchao looked into Li Tianlan's eyes and said with dignity. That's good. You are strong enough. You will work for the flames of war from now on. If you perform well, you will be rewarded. Lu Dongyu stood beside her brother with a smile and said in a soft voice, I know you are all young talents and arrogant, but the situation is stronger than you. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. As long as you kneel down, you can have a bright future. What can't you figure out? Our bright future is earned by ourselves, not by kneeling down. I also have a suggestion. Now you kneel down, and I don't want your flames of war. I'll pretend that nothing happened just now. What do you think? Li Tianlan said coldly. His patience was running out. His impression of the Lu siblings was getting worse. One pretended to be dignified, while the other pretended to be kind. Their hypocrisy made him sick. 3 fire-flaming realm experts wanted the 5 of them to kneel down? Did they think they were in the invincible realm? How dare you insult the descendants of the Lu family? Do you want to die? Lu Dongyu's charming and kind smile slowly disappeared. Her eyes quickly became vicious. She stared at Li Tianlan and said fiercely, I don't care if you are from the Lu family or the Zhang family. I'll say it again. All of you kneel down and I'll forget about what happened today. Li Tianlan's tone was old-fashioned, but he was getting more and more aggressive. Bastard, you want to die? Lu Dongchao suddenly shouted. His body suddenly rose and rushed toward Li Tianlan. The distance of nearly 20 meters did not seem to exist for him. In an instant, he was already in front of Li Tianlan, and opened his hand to grab Li Tianlan's neck. It was forbidden to kill people in the entrance maneuver. But who could say anything if he disabled Li Tianlan first? Swish. Li Tianlan's face was as cold as ice. He suddenly raised the human emperor in his hand. At the front of the human emperor, the silver spear head directly stuck out. The spear blade expanded to both sides. Li Tianlan held the spear and stabbed forward with indomitable will. Lu Dongchao was startled. He subconsciously stopped and took a step back. He stared at the spearhead of the human emperor and narrowed his eyes. He always thought that Li Tianlan's weapon was a long stick. Now that the long stick turned into a long spear, he suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. If he hadn't dodged fast just now, he might have been at a disadvantage now. He was an expert in the fire-flaming realm. Even among the seniors in the last session, he was one of the strongest. If he was at a disadvantage in the hands of a freshman, it would be too shameful. Son of a bitch, how dare you sneak attack me? Lu Dongchao sneered. He looked at Li Tianlan and said slowly, I won't kill you today. I'll take one of your hands first. After the maneuver is over, I'll take your life. I'm not a bitch. Chapter 21. As one of the largest countries in the world, Zhongzhou State had a vast territory and abundant resources. In the hundreds of years since the founding of the country, wealthy families and giant families were not everywhere, but they were not too rare. But in the dark world, the only family that could be called a giant family and could be recognized by everyone was the family that had an invincible being in charge. The Lu family of Huating was a former giant family, which meant that the invincible figure in their family was dead. But this did not mean that the Lu family was desolate. In fact, although the Lu family of Huating was not as glorious as it was in its most glorious period in recent years, it was still an important part of a big force in the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. The unique skills and martial arts of the invincible figure had been passed down. The Lu family might not look as strong as before, but it had passed the difficult period of losing the invincible figure, so its vitality was stronger than before. From Lu Dongchao's point of view, he had nothing to worry about. But having no worries was not what he pursued in this life. What he pursued was to make everyone worry about him. His biggest dream was to become an expert of the invincible realm like his grandfather, to lead the Lu family to the highest point of power in Zhongzhou State again, and to truly stand among the top wealthy families in Zhongzhou State. Lu Dongchao did not like politics, nor did he want to join the army in a generally stable international situation to gain experience. So he finally chose the special warfare system. He had excellent aptitude since he was a child, and there was the inheritance of the invincible figure in his family. Practicing martial arts and fighting in the dark world was the best choice for him. And he was even luckier that he had a like-minded sister, Lu Dongyu, who was equally talented. The brother and sister were very close to each other. They cooperated well with each other since childhood. Once they joined hands, they could even defeat opponents who were much stronger than them across realms. In this way, not only Lu Dongchao saw hope, but also the Lu family saw the hope of restoring the family to its peak state. So the brother and sister were sent to the Sky Academy at the same time. In the second year of the Sky Academy, when they were less than 25 years old, they successfully entered the fire-flaming realm and established the Flames of War. Among the students of the previous Sky Academy, the Flames of War was definitely one of the strongest organizations, and it was also a strong competitor for the quota of only one person in each session. In fact, 3 months before the last batch of students were about to graduate, Lu Dongchao was also one of the top 3 students with the highest credits. He was only 10 points away from each other. However, 1 month before the final maneuver between the 2 academies before graduation, in order to increase his final odds of success, Lu Dongchao led a few elites of the Flames of War to carry out a mission worth 500 credits overseas. The mission was completed smoothly, but Lu Dongchao and Lu Dongyu returned with serious injuries. In the maneuver of the 2 academies that followed, the brother and sister were seriously injured and eliminated halfway. Although they got credits for that mission, they didn't get any credits for the maneuver. This was the graduation maneuver, the maneuver with the most credits awarded. The first place would be awarded 2,000 credits. What did this mean? Lu Dongchao's advantage in credits instantly turned into a disadvantage, and he lost the right to compete for the one and only quota to establish his own force after graduation. Lu Dongchao and his sister were naturally unwilling, and the academy also felt sorry for their misfortune. In the end, under the Lu family's manipulation, Lu Dongchao and his sister stayed in school again. Their credits were reset to 0, and they had to start from scratch. This time Lu Dongchao was full of confidence. He didn't intend to give anyone the slightest chance, whether it was the seniors or the freshmen. Then he met Li Tianlan's 5-member squad. To be honest, Lu Dongchao really didn't take these 5 people seriously. Even after they knocked down his 10 subordinates, he still didn't take them seriously. He could see that Li Tianlan was very strong. Li Tianlan should be at the peak of the qi-controlling realm, but he could instantly kill an expert who had just entered the ice-condensing realm. He was indeed a talent, but so what? No matter how strong the qi-controlling realm was, it was still the qi-controlling realm, while he was an expert of the fire-flaming realm. The gap between the realms could not be made up by potential at all. Except for Li Tianlan, the others were also in the ice-condensing realm with amazing potential. However, Lu Dongchao had entered the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. Together with his sister Lu Dongyu, It was a piece of cake for them to suppress these rising stars if they went all out. But he felt that he still cherished talents, so he was willing to give them a chance. As long as they were willing to kneel down to show submission and join the flames of war, he could let bygones be bygones. After all, talents were rare. But he didn't expect these freshmen to be so ungrateful. Not only did they not kneel down, but they even asked him to kneel to them. It was ridiculous. In Lu Dongchao's view, kissing and kneeling were very normal things. In the Sky Academy, he had seen many beautiful women who were willing to be played by others in order to save 10 credits a month on food and drink. He had also seen many weak people who were willing to knock their foreheads to beg for forgiveness from the strong. In the Sky Academy, the strong should consider their future, while the weak should consider becoming stronger and surviving. In Lu Dongchao's eyes, Li Tianlan and the other 4 were weak people who had the potential to become stronger. So as long as they were willing to be used by him, he was willing to forgive them. But unfortunately, in order to maintain his ridiculous pride and backbone, they chose to refuse. If I can't use them, I might as well just cripple them, lest they have a headache when they grow up. What was more, this guy in front of him had insulted his family. You deserve to die. Lu Dongchao took a deep breath and calmed himself down completely. He stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and said in a cold tone, "My life is here. Come and take it if you can." Li Tianlan's tone was calm and tit for tat. Very good. Lu Dongchao's tone became more and more dangerous. Facing the silver spear in Li Tianlan's hand, his body was completely relaxed, but his eyes were unprecedentedly focused. Li Tianlan's expression gradually became serious. He was not afraid of a young fire-flaming realm expert with the inheritance of an invincible realm expert, but if he didn't show some trump cards, it would not be easy to win. Lu Dongchao looked at Li Tianlan's serious expression and sneered. His completely relaxed fingers suddenly bent and flicked gently. His fingers flicked in the air, but it was like flicking on a real thing, making a crisp sound. A seemingly weak but extremely hot flame suddenly appeared between his fingers and quickly spread to his whole palm. Gas turned into fire. This was the fire-flaming realm. If the ice-condensing realm was to condense the moisture in the air into hard ice, then the fire-flaming realm was to evaporate all the moisture in the air in an instant. In the extremely dry air, one could use the powerful physical strength and extreme speed to rub the air and ignite a flame in the air. In this realm, an expert in the ice-condensing realm could almost crush him, let alone an expert in the chi-controlling realm. The flame in Lu Dongchao's palm grew more and hotter. The flame gradually changed its state with the flicking of his fingers, and finally became a big knife completely condensed by flames. Fire-flaming soldier. Compared with the experts who had just entered the fire-flaming realm, this was obviously a step further, and had completely stabilized in the fire-flaming realm. Lu Dongchao looked at Li Tianlan with a mocking expression. But in Li Tianlan's eyes he could not see any fear or panic. Even the dignified light in his eyes disappeared, leaving only concentration and depth. Lu Dongchao held the fire knife and suddenly looked up. In his sight was the ceiling of the maze, which was nearly 5 or 6 meters high. But at this moment, there was a drop of water falling rapidly above him. In an instant, there was only this drop of water left in Lu Dongchao's pupils. It was pure, transparent, full and smooth in shape and crystal clear. There was endless awe-inspiring sword intent bursting from the top of his head. In an instant, in the extremely dry air, the water in the maze fell like rain. Ice-condensing realm. And it was the unprecedented ice-condensing realm. In a trance, this realm seemed to have surpassed the ice-condensing realm, but it did not enter the fire-flaming realm. Instead, it went to another unknown path. What kind of monster did I provoke? Lu Dongchao muttered to himself in his heart. Out of the corner of his eye, the silver light had already lit up. Li Tianlan took the initiative to attack. Just now he was in the chi-controlling realm, but now he directly entered the ice-condensing realm without meditation. He lifted the human emperor and smashed it at Lu Dongchao. The air shook fiercely. As the human emperor was raised, the drop of water that had not yet fallen directly condensed along the trajectory of the human emperor. The awe-inspiring sword intent moved in the air, making everyone's expression change completely. Ah! Lu Dongchao roared with all his might. In an instant, The fire broadsword in his hand completely disintegrated, and a large amount of flames emerged from all over his body. Around the human emperor, countless water droplets that had condensed together fell one by one, smoothly and cheerfully, but each droplet was like a sword, sharp, cold, and fierce. The human emperor came crashing down on the water drops with great force. Lu Dongqiao roared wildly, and the flames emerging from his body became denser and denser. But the water drops kept falling, and each drop of water could put out a flame. The flames on Lu Dongqiao's body could not rush out, but the water drops falling from the human emperor were endless. Bang! The sound of the weapon hitting the flesh was dull and clear. Lu Dongqiao raised his hands high, and the flames all over his body spread wildly. The fire in his hands kept jumping, and he forcibly caught Li Tianlan's spear. Lu Dongqiao's body shook violently. Li Tianlan's strength and speed were simply incredible. This was not the strength that someone in the ice-condensing realm should have. He had fought back with all his strength, but at this time, he had a ridiculous feeling that he could not take a second shot from Li Tianlan. A horrible idea rose in his mind. Lu Dongqiao's face turned pale and he exclaimed, "Wind and thunder veins! You have wind and thunder veins!" Li Tianlan stood steadily in front of Lu Dongqiao, holding the spear with one hand and constantly pressing it down. His spear body was gently trembling in a regular pattern, and a large number of water drops continued to gather and whistle toward him along with the slight trembling of the human emperor. There were already countless water balls floating around the human emperor and Li Tianlan. "Now kneel down for me, and I can pretend that nothing happened." It was still the same words and the same request, but when Li Tianlan said it just now, everyone felt that he was overestimating himself. But now, Lu Dongqiao obviously hadn't lost yet, but Li Tianlan's words gave others an irresistible majesty when they heard it. "Big brother!" Lu Dongyu, who had been watching the battle, finally reacted. She screamed and rushed directly to Li Tianlan. The unprecedented ice-condensing realm, the once-in-a-century wind and thunder veins, the freshman in front of her was too strange. She felt that it was necessary to join hands with her big brother to deal with him. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as Lu Dongyu took a step forward, the sound of water suddenly sounded beside her. A few ice walls abruptly appeared beside her, completely blocking her path. An ice sword condensed from water floated around Li Beitian. Within the ice wall that trapped Lu Dongyu, the sword intent gradually turned from vague to clear. Li Beitian, who was as thin as a bamboo pole and looked so weak that everyone ignored him, took a step forward and said loudly, "Li Taishu, the great void sword master of Mount Shu, is willing to learn the unique skill of the Lu family." As he spoke, the ice wall that trapped Lu Dongyu instantly shattered. Countless ice swords directly enveloped Lu Dongyu's entire body. There was a fire burning on Lu Dongyu's body. Countless ice swords instantly disappeared in the fire, but the cold sword energy was still flying around her body. A large number of ice swords disappeared from existence, as if merging into the void. This was the unique skill of Mount Shu. Chapter 22. Great Void Sword Master Li Taishu. The expressions of everyone in the flames of war changed. Although this name was in the list of the top 10 young experts, the value of this name itself was much higher than that of the top 10 experts. How convincing could a list of the top 10 experts, which was ranked every year, be? But for hundreds of years, Great Void Sword Master of Mount Shu had become an expert of the invincible realm, which was more convincing than any list. Lu Dongqiao was vaguely suppressed. Lu Dongyu was trapped by Li Taishu. It seemed that Tan Shilai was the only one in the entire flames of war who could contribute and be of great help. Tan Shilai hesitated slightly. The freshmen in front of him were beyond his expectation. His intuition told him that he'd better not provoke them. But as the third in command of the flames of war, how could he keep a foothold in the Sky Academy in the future if he fled at this time? He gritted his teeth and took a sudden step forward with flames flashing around him. One step before, it was midsummer. One step after, it was cold winter. The dense ice sword seemed to have been waiting for Tan Shilai's action. Before his feet touched the ground, at least hundreds of ice swords had lined up in a seemingly mysterious formation and rushed toward him. It was one of the three most basic and esoteric sword movements in Jade Pool. Prairie Fire Sword Storm. The dense ice swords crazily attacked the flames around Tan Shilai. The sword rain was like ice, but the sword momentum was like fire, never stopping. Ning Qianqing's tone was cold and fierce. If you dare to move again, I'll stay here with you today until I die. Help! Are you all dead? Tan Shilai, who was trapped in the sword rain, was exasperated. He ignored Ning Qianqing and suddenly roared at the members of the Flames of War who were watching the show. The elites of the Flames of War standing stupidly outside the battlefield were all stunned. More than half of them subconsciously wanted to help. Wang Yuetong from the Wang family of Beihai is willing to compete with senior brothers. Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes and took a step forward, smiling innocently. As soon as she said that, not only the elites of the Flames of War turned pale, but also the faces of the 3 experts of the fire-flaming realm on the battlefield suddenly changed. The Wang family of Beihai. Only those who really came into contact with the upper class of Zhongzhou State knew what these 4 words meant. There were quite a few wealthy families in Zhongzhou State, and the Lu family in Huading was one of them. But compared with the Wang family of Beihai, to put it bluntly, the current Lu family was only qualified to carry shoes for the Wang family at most. Even when the invincible realm expert of the Lu family was alive, he was far inferior to the Wang family. Zhongzhou State had been founded for hundreds of years. The Wang family had only been glorious for a few hundred years. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a family? He had always heard that Princess Yuetong, the demoness of the Wang family, was in Beihai province. Why did she suddenly come to the Sky Academy? Wasn't this a King scam? Everyone from the Flames of War froze on the spot. No one dared to move. Lu Dongqiao was depressed, but he kept the flame on his body. The water balls around him were still floating, and the water drops were like swords, falling endlessly. Such an incredible ice-condensing realm made him feel hopeless. Right now he really needed help, but he also understood that his subordinates wouldn't be able to help. The Lu family was an important part of another superpower in Zhongzhou State. As the core of the younger generation of the Lu family, he was not afraid of the Wang family. But how could his subordinates dare to make a move under the Wang family's name? On the other side, the sword energy around Lu Dongyu was flying faster and faster. All the ice swords seemed to be in a state of illusory and real. They were ethereal and came and went like the wind. The moment Wang Yuetong spoke, Lu Dongyu was directly shocked by the 4 words Wang family of Beihai. Li Beitian seized the opportunity, and countless seemingly illusory ice swords directly cut numerous wounds of different depths on her body. Dongyu. Lu Dongqiao was anxious, and the flame around him suddenly shook slightly. Several raindrops suddenly passed through the flame and fell on him. Water was the softest thing, but at this time, it was like the sharpest blade. A few drops of water fell on Lu Dongqiao's arm, and suddenly his whole arm was penetrated, dripping with blood. Still not willing to kneel down and admit defeat? Li Tianlan looked at Lu Dongqiao coldly. He was still holding the spear down with one hand, while Lu Dongqiao was still holding the human emperor with both hands. For the time being, Lu Dongqiao couldn't lift it up, and Li Tianlan couldn't press it down either. They seemed to be in a confrontation. But Li Tianlan, who had the wind and thunder veins, had almost endless physical strength. How long could Lu Dongqiao hold on? Admit defeat? Dream on. Lu Dongqiao gritted his teeth and roared. The raindrops fell on his arm. Under the sharp pain, he subconsciously loosened the hand holding the human emperor. Supported by one hand, Li Tianlan kept exerting force, and Lu Dongqiao's whole body bent. Really? Li Tianlan asked coldly. The human emperor trembled slightly, and the water ball floating around him shook slightly. Another drop of rain fell from the ceiling. Then, more and more raindrops fell from the ceiling. This time the water drops were no longer round. Each drop of water became the shape of a sword. Delicate, sharp, with indescribable elegance and the breath of death. Sword rain. This is the sword rain, the real sword rain. Wang Yuetong's eyes were fanatical. Looking at the falling raindrops, she kept muttering to herself. Brother Li is so powerful. Yu Qingyan was also fascinated. She glanced at Wang Yuetong and whispered, Sister Yuetong, what realm is Brother Li in now? Is it condensing ice? Or is it flaming fire? Is he hiding his strength? Wang Yuetong thought for a while and whispered with some uncertainty. His real realm should still be the chi-controlling realm, but he should have entered the ice-condensing realm, or even a higher realm. He just fell and recultivated again. He has been to that realm, so it's completely possible to temporarily forcibly improve himself to that state. It's okay to do it once or twice, but if it happens too often, it will affect his foundation, and he has no hope of reaching the invincible realm. Recultivation? Yu Qingyan's eyes were full of little stars, and she felt dizzy. Why would anyone choose to recultivate? Maybe it's because he had to? It's possible that he was possessed by the devil, or his martial arts were destroyed. Only recultivation can explain the fact that once he enters a new realm, he is in the peak state. Well, some special medicine can also achieve this effect, but he didn't take it. Moreover, his fighting style in the ice-condensing realm is obviously rich in experience, which can only be explained by him having been in this realm. Wang Yuetong chuckled, looked at Li Tianlan's back and murmured to herself, "Qingyan, I think I'm in love. I'll ask you one last time. Are you willing to kneel down?" The rain of swords fell on Li Tianlan's head, flying around him. Li Tianlan frowned, looked at Lu Dongqiao in front of him, and said in an increasingly calm tone, "In your dreams." Lu Dongqiao's eyes were extremely solemn, and he gnashed his teeth. Failure. This word came to his mind again. What was the consequence of failure? Lu Dongqiao dared not think about it, but he had to think about it. Once he failed, this maneuver would be a mess. The morale of the flames of war would be scattered, and they might even face the risk of disbanding. His years of effort would be ruined in the hands of the freshman in front of him. How could he accept such a result? In any case, he could not accept it. A fire-flaming realm expert lost to an ice-condensing realm expert. Why did this happen? Why? His breathing became heavier and heavier, and his eyes gradually became blood-red. Li Tianlan looked at him quietly, and suddenly narrowed his eyes and smiled. "You can't do it more than 3 times. I've asked you one last time, and I'm very happy. Your answer is exactly what I want." Boom! All the water balls floating around him suddenly exploded. The water swords above his head also fell. "Go to hell!" Lu Dongqiao roared with all his strength, and there were large patches of fire rising from his body. In an instant, he had tried his best to stand up under the suppression of human emperor. He did stand up. But he didn't stand up, but flew up. As he exerted his strength upward, Li Tianlan did the same. Li Tianlan exerted strength in his arms, and directly lifted Lu Dongqiao up with a spear. Lu Dongqiao's body hung on the head of human emperor's spear, and he felt unprecedented humiliation. A large number of water droplets and rain swords crazily hit his body. The fire around him was getting weaker and weaker, and in the blink of an eye, he was already covered with blood. "Brother!" Under the great void sword intent, Lu Dongyu screamed in despair. But Lu Dongqiao did not respond, and he was completely disheartened. Li Tianlan lifted Lu Dongqiao, narrowed his eyes, and chuckled. "How do you feel? If you can survive, you can be an ordinary person in the future." A large number of water droplets suddenly shook, and in an instant, all the water droplets turned into sword rain, rushing toward Lu Dongqiao. The sword intent rushed into the sky like a torrent. "Student, please show mercy." An impatient voice filled with ice-cold anger and killing intent rang out. Li Tianlan only felt that human emperor became lighter, and the next second Lu Dongqiao, who was on the spearhead, had been held in the arms of a figure who suddenly appeared. The torrent-like sword rain hit the figure who suddenly appeared, bringing with it a large number of flickering fire. The fire was dissipating. The sword rain was evaporating. The fire rose and extinguished at will. An expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. For the first time, Li Tianlan's cold or gentle eyes showed a trace of naked and undisguised killing intent. The human emperor trembled slightly in his hand, and a large number of sword rain swirled around his body like a crystal-clear belt of light. "Who are you?" His voice was cold, but the fighting intent in his eyes was completely burning. "I'm Lu Xiuwei, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy." Lu Xiuwei held Lu Dongqiao's body and quickly checked his injuries. A cold killing intent flashed in his eyes, and then he looked at Li Tianlan and said with a fake smile. He looked about 50 years old, short, thin, and slightly bald. His personal image could be described as a mess, But when he stood there casually, there was a kind of momentum that no one could ignore. What's your relationship with Lu Dongqiao? Li Tianlan took a deep breath, and his killing intent seemed to be completely restrained. But at this moment, he gave people a more dangerous feeling than when he was full of killing intent. This is my nephew, classmate. You hurt Dongqiao like this. In any case, you must give me an explanation. Lu Xiaowei was still smiling, but his smile gradually became cold. I can't kill people in the maneuver. Except that I can't kill people. Everything I do is right. Director Lu, your nephew is not dead. What explanation do you want? Li Tianlan asked lightly. I'm here today, not as the deputy director of the teaching office, and I don't care about your maneuver. I'm Lu Dongqiao's uncle, and I want an explanation from you as his uncle. What can you do? Lu Xiaowei said with a gloomy look. A wave of hostility suddenly rose from the depths of Li Tianlan's heart. He narrowed his eyes and sneered. You mean that you don't need to give us an explanation when Lu Dongqiao robbed us of the credit counting table? And you don't need to give us an explanation when he ordered his men to attack us. But now that I hurt him, I need to give you an explanation? That's the content of the maneuver, and it has nothing to do with me. What explanation do I need to give you? Lu Xiaowei waved his hand and said expressionlessly. Good, haha, very good. Li Tianlan was so angry that he laughed. He hurt us, and that's the content of the maneuver. I hurt him, so I need to give you an explanation. The Sky Academy has such a deputy director, and it's a disgrace to the entire academy. I've said that I'm not standing in front of you as the deputy director, but as Dongqiao's uncle. I want an explanation from you. Classmate, if you don't give it, don't blame me for taking it myself. Lu Xiaowei sneered and stared at Li Tianlan with undisguised killing intent. What explanation do you want? Li Tianlan looked at Lu Xiaowei, and his tone became calm again. Lu Xiaowei made it clear that he was shameless to the end and unreasonable because of his strength. It was useless for him to say anything more. The silver spear in your hand is destined to be my nephew Dongqiao's. Why don't you give it to me as compensation? Besides, you can cut off one of your arms and I'll let it go. Of course, if Dongqiao wants to take revenge on you in the future, it's your personal grudge, and it has nothing to do with me. What do you think, classmate? Lu Xiaowei's face softened, and he said with a smile. In the face of such a shameless person, Li Tianlan was not even interested in being angry. Without raising his eyelids, he said loudly, I refuse. Classmate, I have to remind you that young people who don't know when to stop will eventually die a terrible death. Lu Xiaowei laughed, and his eyes became more and more greedy as he stared at the silver spear. Now that it's come to this, I can only move forward. Whoever asks me to retreat, I'll kill him. The silver spear in Li Tianlan's hand shook, and he said gently, including the deputy director of the Sky Academy. Boy, you're courting death by insulting the deputy director of the Sky Academy. Lu Xiaowei flew into a rage. He raised his hands, handed Lu Dongqiao's body to a member of the Flames of War, and directly rushed toward Li Tianlan. At the exit of the maze, in an instant, the fire became brighter and hotter than ever. Lu Xiaowei seemed to have turned into a huge fireball. In the air, he swooped down toward Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan raised his human emperor, and his pupils reflecting the fire were dead silent. The sword rain, which was like a belt of light around him, rushed toward Lu Xiaowei without reservation. In the increasingly hot and dry air, there were still drops of water falling from the ceiling. The water was endless, and the cold light was shining. Chapter 23. The fire did not go out. The water kept dripping. The space at the exit of the maze became hot and humid. With Lu Xiaowei as the center, the fire from all directions gathered toward him, and then tried to expand. Meanwhile, the rain of swords continued to rain down on the light screen formed by the flames. The sword chi was awe-inspiring and seemed to be endless. It was like a belt of light, like a swimming dragon, like a torrent. Fire and sword rain were everywhere. The fire was roaring, the sword rain was humming, and the water and fire were opposing each other, forming an extremely gorgeous picture. Each of the 4 realms of martial arts was divided into 3 stages. The initial stage, the stabilization stage, and the peak stage that was about to break through. Lu Xiaowei was at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Even among the experts of the same realm as him, he was one of the best. It was impossible for a person with average combat strength to be the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. Lu Xiaowei and his nephew Lu Dongqiao were both at the fire-flaming realm, but the stabilization stage and the peak stage were two completely different concepts. The further one went in the cultivation of martial arts, the greater the gap would be. It was beyond everyone's expectation that Li Tianlan could defeat Lu Dongqiao. But now, he was not at a disadvantage in the face of Lu Xiaowei, which made everyone feel complicated. Even Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing got rid of their opponents and stood in front of Wang Yuetong, watching the battle in front of them with solemn expressions. This is bad. I'm afraid Tianlan is no match for this old guy. Ning Qianqing stared at the battlefield of water and fire, and said in a low voice, "Then stop talking nonsense. Go and help." Li Beitian raised the ice sword in his hand again, and said without hesitation, "Help. You'll have to get through me first." Lu Dongyu took a step forward and stared at Li Beitian in a resentful tone. The Great Void Sword intent was unpredictable. In the short fight with Li Taishu, she did not suffer a big loss because of her high realm, but she was embarrassed by countless sword energy. Her carefully modified camouflage clothes were cut one after another, and her snow-white skin was dripping with blood. Although it did not affect her appearance much, it was a great shame for Lu Dongyu. As she spoke, Tan Shilai stood beside Lu Dongyu without hesitation. And then the rest of the people of the Flames of War took a step forward at the same time. It was like a repeat of what had happened a few minutes ago. At that time it was Li Beitian and the others who stopped Lu Dongyu from saving Lu Dongqiao. But now, it was Lu Dongyu and the others who stopped Li Beitian from helping Li Tianlan. Li Beitian narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have turned into a sharp sword, sharp and threatening. "Don't worry about me." Around him, the dense rain of swords fell faster and faster, hitting the curtain of fire in front of Lu Xiaowei. But the fire around Lu Xiaowei was getting stronger and stronger. Before the rain of swords could get close to the fire, they were completely evaporated. But Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. "You guys find a chance to leave first. This old guy can't keep me. Young man, you're quite arrogant. Since that's the case, I'll give you something fun." Lu Xiaowei grinned hideously and took a step forward. The fire around him suddenly shook violently and then spread. The fire around Lu Xiaowei was weak, but the temperature was getting hotter. The rain of swords could not touch him, but the spreading fire turned into 4 streams of fire and rushed toward Li Tianlan. The unique skill of the Lu family, shaking all directions. Lu Tianqing, an expert of the invincible realm of the Lu family, could be said to be the representative of late bloomers in martial arts. Lu Tianqing was not talented and barely entered the fire-flaming realm at the age of 35. But after entering the fire-flaming realm, he seemed to be suddenly enlightened and made rapid progress. 2 years later, he entered the thunder-shocking realm. At the age of 42, he had become an expert of the invincible realm. Although Lu Tianqing had been dead for only 10 years, some of his unique skills were still famous. Shaking all directions was one of the unique skills that made Lu Tianqing famous. For streams of fire surged, and the air became blurred and twisted under the high temperature. Lu Xiaowei was full of killing intent, and rushed toward Li Tianlan along with the 4 streams of fire. The streams of fire rushed toward him. The moisture in the air seemed to have evaporated completely. The rain of swords around Li Tianlan was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye, but his eyes were still calm. The human emperor was shaking violently. The rain of swords fought against the streams of fire around him. Lu Xiaowei, who was still surrounded by flames, strode toward Li Tianlan. 5 meters. 3 meters. Li Tianlan suddenly moved forward. The violently shaking human emperor pierced Lu Xiaowei's chest like a silver lightning. There was a sudden chill in the hot air. The rain of swords turned into ice and quickly gathered around Li Tianlan. In less than a second, Li Tianlan seemed to be covered with a thin layer of ice. The endless rain of swords disappeared in an instant. In an instant, there was only silver light in the raging fire. The whistling energy mixed with broken ice appeared. The stream of fire in front of Li Tianlan was directly blown aside, but the silver spear was still moving forward, riding the wind, breaking ice, and extinguishing the fire. Wherever the silver spear went, there was nothing it could not break. Bang! The rapidly moving human emperor was tightly held by a skinny hand. Lu Xiaowei appeared in front of Li Tianlan and sneered. The wind and thunder veins are really terrifying. But your realm is too low. It's not interesting. His hands were surrounded by flames, and the hot temperature was directly transmitted to Li Tianlan's hands through the metal body of the human emperor. Give it to me. Lu Xiaowei suddenly shouted and raised his hands. The 50-kilogram human emperor was lifted up by him. Li Tianlan, who was holding the human emperor, was also lifted up by him. The unique skill of the Lu family. Resisting the cauldron. He concentrated all his energy in his limbs and burst out the most terrifying power in the shortest time. He could carry a 500-kilogram cauldron, let alone the 100-kilogram human emperor. Lu Xiaowei held one end of the spearhead with both hands, and directly lifted Li Tianlan above his head. The flames spread up along the spear and reached Li Tianlan's hands in the blink of an eye. Li Tianlan gathered water drops in his hands and barely blocked the flames. But the other 3 streams of fire were still hitting his back, trying to completely swallow the thin ice on his body. With Lu Xiaowei's current realm, when the thin ice on his body broke, he would die. Such a terrible temperature was enough to completely burn his body into ashes in a second. This old dog not only wanted to take the human emperor, but also wanted to kill people. As the deputy director of the Sky Academy, where did he get the courage to kill a student of the Sky Academy in the entrance maneuver? Let go of me. Lu Xiaowei smiled cruelly and looked at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at a dead man. He held the human emperor and kept shaking his hands. The terrible power directly passed through the spear to Li Tianlan's body. Blood flowed down from the corner of Li Tianlan's mouth and fell on his hands, dyeing the spear red. Tianlan. Li Baiqian's expression changed and the sword intent flashed in his eyes. This can't go on. Senior brother Tianlan doesn't seem to have any decent unique skill. He is only relying on his own strength and realm. He can't hold on any longer. Wang Yuetong frowned and said, the so-called unique skill, to put it bluntly, was the most thorough use of one's own strength and combat capability. To be exact, it was similar to unique skills. When there was a big gap between the two sides, the strength would naturally crush everything. But if the two sides were on par, the one who mastered the more powerful unique skill would be the final winner. Lu Xiaowei's unique skill was taught by Lu Tianqing, an expert of the invincible realm. But now Li Tianlan was relying on brute force. There was no doubt that he would win or lose. If he continued to hold on, it was a question whether he could survive. Swish. Before Wang Yuetong's voice died away, Ning Qianqing had already taken a sudden step forward. Countless ice swords surrounded him and flattened out in a second. The ice swords were cold, and the sword intent was like fire. Prairie fire sword storm. Countless ice swords rushed toward Lu Xiaowei, but were stopped by Tan Xilai. Ning Qianqing looked indifferent. Without retreating, he rushed toward Tan Xilai at full speed. His eyes seemed to be burning at this moment. Every move he made showed his determination at all costs. He was an officer of the Border Control Corps. He came to the Sky Academy in the name of learning, but his code name was Man of Sacrifice. He was not afraid of death, so what was there for him to be afraid of? Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sword intent in Li Baiqian's eyes seemed to have completely condensed into a substance. The exquisite ice swords around him stopped and trembled slightly in front of him. Countless erratic sword intents quickly gathered together, and the ice swords gradually turned from crystal clear to lustrous white. The surging coldness continued to concentrate on the ice swords in front of Li Baiqian. The aura of the exquisite ice swords grew sharper and sharper, and Li Baiqian's momentum kept rising. His swords grew whiter and whiter. His face grew paler and paler. Blood flowed down from Li Baiqian's eyes, but he didn't feel it. He just stared at Lu Dongyu, who looked terrible in front of him, and said calmly, "Get out of my way." This sword strike was really a fight to the death. Everyone could see that Li Baiqian was still unable to completely control this sword, but he still used it in a situation where he could not. This was enough to show his determination to fight with his life on the line. Ning Qianqing was fighting desperately. So was Li Baiqian. All for Li Tianlan. The exquisite ice swords in front of him grew whiter and whiter. As the coldness gathered, it seemed to have begun to bloom a pure milky white light. The second move of Great Void Sword. All swords in one. At this moment, even Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan's blood was boiling. They took a step forward at the same time. Yu Qingyan stretched out her white and tender hands. The color of her palms changed, and a thin layer of ice condensed in her hands. Under the thin layer of ice, her palms had become a strange cyan color. Wang Yuetong was silent, but her body was surrounded by frost. Behind her, a huge sword 1/2 meter wide and 2 or 3 meters long was also taking shape. Ice and fire, the huge sword and the girl. At this moment, Wang Yuetong's ponytail directly flew up, and her long black hair fluttered behind her. Princess Yuetong, who had always given people a sense of enchantment, looked indescribably domineering and powerful with the huge sword behind her, full of the demeanor of a king. Little guys are very loyal. Since you don't want to leave, then don't leave. When I get rid of this guy, none of you can escape. Lu Xiaowei cackled and looked at Li Tianlan, who held the human emperor tightly, with an extremely vicious look in his eyes. Beitian, you go first. I have a way to get out. Trust me this once. Li Tianlan was still held up in the air by Lu Xiaowei. The tremendous force hit him again and again. His injuries were getting more and more serious, but his tone was still calm as a glacier that never melted. Li Baitian's eyebrows moved, but his face was expressionless. Why did you team up with me if you don't trust me? Li Tianlan frowned, and his tone was a little hurried. If you want to leave, we'll leave together. It has nothing to do with whether you trust me or not. Give me a minute, and I'll go help you after I get rid of this woman. Li Baitian's tone was calm. Together? Li Tianlan gently raised the corner of his mouth, looked at Lu Xiaowei with undisguised killing intent in his eyes, and said, Okay, let's go together. He held the human emperor with both hands, and all his joints shook at the same time. At this moment, the innate divine power given to him by the thunder vein burst out without reservation. He stabbed the spear straight down. Lu Xiaowei frowned, and his hand holding the spear slipped a little, and the spear tip suddenly moved a few centimeters toward his abdomen. The sharp strength qi almost pierced through his skin, causing his entire abdomen to feel a burning pain. Lu Xiaowei's expression did not change, and he snorted coldly. He put more force in his palm, trying to push the human emperor back. As soon as he put more force, Lu Xiaowei was shocked, because Li Tianlan did not resist at all on the other end of the silver spear, and directly flew backward with his force. The spear head suddenly shrank in a violent tremor, and the silver spear was shortening. As Li Tianlan withdrew the spear blades on both sides slid directly to his palm. Despicable boy! Lu Xiaowei shouted angrily, and subconsciously loosened his palm. Li Tianlan was in the air, rising higher and higher with the force of Lu Xiaowei's push. The human emperor stretched again in the air, and he held the spear in his hand, breaking the wall with one thrust. Without any suspense, a big hole was broken in the ceiling. Li Tianlan's figure directly rushed out of the hole, and instantly disappeared. Want to leave? Stay here. Lu Xiaowei's face turned red. With his strength in the fire-flaming realm, he let a boy in the ice-condensing realm escape. It was ridiculous. Flames spread out from his body, and a large number of falling black bricks were directly burned to ashes in the flames. He also rushed out of the hole, chasing after Li Tianlan, and disappeared. Go after him. Li Baitian was stunned for a moment, and then he jumped and directly chased after him. But in a few seconds, Li Tianlan and Lu Xiaowei, one running and the other chasing, were nowhere to be seen. East. Li Baitian thought for a moment, and said decisively. Out of the maze, all the way to the east, they could reach the end of the maneuver. In Li Baitian's view, since Li Tianlan was no match for Lu Xiaowei, he must go all the way to the east. As long as he reached the end, with the protection of the headmaster, Lu Xiaowei could do nothing to him. The others nodded and quickly went east. But in fact, Li Tianlan went all the way to the north. He seemed to be easy to talk to, but if someone really provoked him, he would be more vengeful than anyone else. The shamelessness and arrogance of the Lu family had completely infuriated him, and it was obvious that they wanted to kill him. In any case, he had to teach the whole Lu family a lesson. You don't let me live well. I'll let you die a horrible death. Li Tianlan was extremely fast. He rushed out of the maze and disappeared in the woods in a flash. Lu Xiuwei, who followed him closely, could only see a vague shadow. Lu Xiuwei sneered and followed him without hesitation, with the same determination to kill. Li Tianlan was one of the most outstanding freshmen in recent years. Since he had provoked him, if he was not completely killed today, the whole Lu family would not have peace in the future. He had to kill him. The two rushed into the woods one after the other, going deeper and deeper in the woods. 500 meters. 1,000 meters. 2,000 meters. Lu Xiuwei, who had been following Li Tianlan closely, suddenly stopped. He furrowed his brows and turned his skinny and short body, looking around vigilantly. He was here. 1 second ago he could still feel that Li Tianlan was here, but the next second, Li Tianlan seemed to have disappeared. Lu Xiuwei frowned and looked around. There was no one in the east. There was no one in the west. There was no one in the north. There was no one in the south. Lu Xiuwei turned his head, and his pupils suddenly contracted. In his sight, on a thick tree less than 20 meters away from him, Li Tianlan was standing there quietly, holding the human emperor in his hand and looking down at him condescendingly, as if he was looking at a dead man. Lu Xiuwei's heart sank for no reason, and it directly sank to the bottom. Li Tianlan was just a nonentity who had not entered the fire-flaming realm, but his fearless attitude made Lu Xiuwei feel extremely uneasy. He took a deep breath, looked at Li Tianlan, and reached out to him, saying slowly, "Give me your weapon and break one of your arms, and I will let you go today. What do you think?" Li Tianlan's mouth curled up into a meaningful smile. He narrowed his eyes, looked at Lu Xiuwei, and said with a smile, "You kill yourself now, and I will let the Lu family go in the future. What do you think?" "Arrogant boy. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Lu Xiuwei flew into a rage, and was about to pounce on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan laughed and said in a cold tone, "Fulfill my wish? You had enough fun in the maze, and now it's my turn." He suddenly stamped on the trunk with one foot, and all the nearby trees seemed to shake violently. In Lu Xiuwei's suddenly contracted pupils, countless trees shook at the same time, and thousands of leaves fell from the treetops, rushing toward him. The whole forest seemed to be filled with sword energy. It was sharp, cold, and ruthless. Tens of thousands of leaves fluttered majestically, completely enveloping the entire forest and blocking out the sun. Lu Xiuwei was surrounded by flames, and he attacked with all his strength. A staircase of ice condensed by water vapor suddenly appeared in front of Lu Xiuwei. Before he could react, a silver spear suddenly appeared and pierced his head. There was no sign, and there was no way to guard against it. Lu Xiuwei instinctively took a big step back, looking terrified. Li Tianlan seemed to cross a distance of more than 10 meters with one step, and stood on the ice staircase in the air. The silver spear, with the light of death, was elegant and charming. "You deserve to die," Li Tianlan said with a smile, and suddenly raised the human emperor. In the forest, leaves fluttered like rain, whistling back and forth, covering the sky and the sun, blocking all the outside world's sight. Lu Xiuwei stared at Li Tianlan with a pale face and said nothing. At that moment, as Li Tianlan raised the silver spear, ice staircases appeared everywhere within dozens of meters around the two of them. Li Tianlan's figure was like a ghost, constantly moving on the surrounding ice staircases. For a moment, Lu Xiuwei seemed to be surrounded by Li Tianlan. He was everywhere. A 5,000-word chapter. Is it big? The new book released on the 2nd. Today is the 11th. 9 days, 100,000 words. It shouldn't be slow. Chapter 24. As the direct descendant of an invincible realm expert, everything Lu Xiuwei learned came from his father, Lu Tianqing. For anyone who was interested in martial arts, this was an unimaginable wealth. As the most populous country in the world, Zhongzhou State had a population of 1.5 billion. But how many invincible realm experts were there among these 1.5 billion people? 4. There were only 4 invincible realm experts in the entire Zhongzhou State. Including the dead Lu Tianqing, there were no more than 5. But how many warriors were there in Zhongzhou State? There were thousands, millions, or even hundreds of millions of them. Few of them were lucky enough to be taught by an invincible realm expert. In this respect, Lu Xiaowei was absolutely lucky. His talent was not outstanding, even a little bad. But because he was Lu Tianqing's son, he became an expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. He could even have a glimpse of the thunder-shocking realm in his lifetime. All this was because of the solid foundation his father laid for him. And because of his good father, Lu Xiaowei could be regarded as an expert even among the experts at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. But it did not mean that Lu Xiaowei did not know the shortcomings of his family's martial arts. It took his father, Lu Tianqing, less than 10 years to enter the invincible realm from the fire-flaming realm. The unique skill of the Lu family was fierce in offense and steady in defense. It could be said that it was good at both offense and defense. But the unique skill of the Lu family had a shortcoming that everyone knew and couldn't ignore. That was, it was not fast enough. The Lu family's martial arts could attack and defend, but once it encountered an extremely agile opponent, it would become extremely passive. This shortcoming existed when Lu Tianqing was alive. At that time, people knew that the Lu family needed an extremely agile unique skill to make up for their shortcomings. But now, after so many years, the Lu family had never found a suitable body movement, so the shortcoming still existed. But everyone knew the shortcoming of the Lu family's martial arts. But the Lu family had always been intact for many years, which was enough to prove that even if the shortcoming existed, it would not be too serious. In the whole dark world, except for a few recognized top body movements, other body movements were extremely limited in restraining the Lu family's martial arts. At the beginning, Lu Xiaowei did not take Li Tianlan seriously. At the end of the maneuver, there were two big screens, on which most of the scenes inside and outside the maze could be seen. At this time, the leaders and teachers of the Sky Academy gathered there, watching the performances of the freshmen and the seniors. In the beginning, Lu Xiaowei was one of them. When Li Tianlan broke the wall 5 times, his figure had already appeared on the big screen, which made all the teachers of the Sky Academy remember this freshman. When he broke the wall 20 times, someone had already confirmed that he had the wind and thunder veins. But Lu Xiaowei still didn't take it seriously. Judging from the way Li Tianlan broke the wall, he was sure that he was a warrior who took the domineering way. The wind vein was indeed born with amazing speed, but what was the use of such speed without excellent body movements? From Li Tianlan breaking the wall to the subsequent battle, Lu Xiaowei saw it all, which made him even more certain that Li Tianlan was indeed a warrior who took the domineering path. There was no other possibility. Li Tianlan in the maze was exactly as he had predicted. But why did he seem to be a different person as soon as he entered the forest? Looking at the countless ice steps in front of him, Lu Xiaowei felt so suffocated that he almost vomited blood. The leaves in the sky whistled and formed a flock, completely blocking the view from above. Li Tianlan's body kept changing from one step to another as if he was teleporting, looking for the most comfortable angle of attack. Lu Xiaowei could not even see any sign of him exerting any strength. Li Tianlan could cross a distance of more than 10 meters with just a casual step, and appear on another step. All the steps seemed to have become a part of his body, and he could go wherever he wanted. Lu Xiaowei felt a little cold inside. He knew that in order to see the situation of each student, nearly 10,000 cameras were installed in the maze, and a low-altitude satellite was placed over the forest. But now, with the leaves above, no one would see what he would experience next. Did he want to hide this body movement? What the hell is this body movement? Lu Xiaowei had dominated the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State for decades, but he had never seen this kind of body movement. Turning the void into ice, borrowing the strength of the ice stare, and achieving the effect of teleportation within a radius of dozens of meters, should be the top unique skill in the entire dark world. But he had never heard of it before. Lu Xiaowei's heart kept sinking, but his voice was still calm. Although he was uneasy, he was still an expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Facing an ice-condensing realm expert, he did not think he would lose. What body movement is this? I'll tell you before you die. Li Tianlan's figure kept changing on the countless ice steps, so his voice came from all directions, fragmented, with colder indifference than ice. You? Lu Xiaowei stood where he was with a sneer. Come on, I'll see how you kill me. Okay. Li Tianlan responded, and the silver spearhead arrived at the same time as his voice. The fierce chi roared recklessly. Lu Xiaowei's hands were on fire. He raised his hands to grab it, but the violently shaking spearhead stopped. Before the chi in front of him dissipated, Li Tianlan had appeared behind him and stabbed him with the spear again. Insignificant skill. Lu Xiaowei's body burst into flames. He did not hold back and attacked with all his strength. As long as he melted all the steps around him, how could Li Tianlan get close to him? Give me your body movement and weapon, and I'll let you go this time. The flames around Lu Xiaowei rippled, and his voice was cold and dignified. Although he said that this movement technique was just a small trick, the more he experienced the profoundness of this movement technique, the more his eyes burned. This was the movement technique that the Lu family had been dreaming of. You want it? Li Tianlan sneered. Come and get it yourself. Whoosh. Behind him, the silver spear whistled again and struck Lu Xiaowei's back with violent killing intent. Li Tianlan's attack suddenly became crazy. The spear, which weighed more than 50 kilograms, was waved with all his strength. Wherever the spear passed, there were harsh whistles and fierce chi. The ice steps around Lu Xiaowei collapsed and reassembled, and Li Tianlan's body appeared in all directions. Stabbing, sweeping, chopping, and flicking. Lu Xiaowei was surrounded by Li Tianlan, silver spears, and fierce energy chi. He attacked at close range. The spear was like a dragon. At this moment, Li Tianlan was unprecedentedly focused and crazy. His surging killing intent and fighting intent were released with every swing of the spear. It destroyed everything and tore everything apart. Crack. The ice steps in front of Lu Xiaowei were broken like tofu, and the shining spearhead stabbed his chest. Lu Xiaowei stepped back. Behind him, the endless sword rain and leaves enveloped him. As the flames burned, the silver spear hit his head again. Fast, dense, coherent, and domineering. In this state, Li Tianlan's every move seemed to carry a kind of real invincible momentum, which was irresistible and unstoppable. Wherever the silver spear passed, with the help of the wind and thunder veins, even Lu Xiaowei had to dodge temporarily. He kept retreating. Li Tianlan's attack became more and more crazy, and Lu Xiaowei couldn't find any chance to fight back. He kept retreating again and again. He could only defend. The flames in Lu Xiaowei's hands burned more and more fiercely, and his thin body retreated between two trees quietly. Li Tianlan's eyes were deathly still, and he chased after him without hesitation and chopped with the spear. Go to hell! Lu Xiaowei suddenly shouted, and the flames in his hands suddenly rose. In the blink of an eye, a big saber made of flames appeared in his hands. Lu Xiaowei took a step forward, got close to Li Tianlan, and chopped down with the saber. In close combat, long weapons were a complete burden. When Li Tianlan struck down with his spear, the spear would at most fall on his head, but his saber was enough to split him in half. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, held the spear with both hands, and suddenly raised it over his head. Crack. The silver spear was directly stuck between two trees because it was too long, and it couldn't move forward or backward. Lu Xiaowei's fire saber fiercely chopped on the silver spear. It was silent, but the water and fire were surging. Before the momentum of the saber was exhausted, Lu Xiaowei had already gathered his strength and exerted more force, from chopping down to chopping up. Now that the silver spear was stuck in the trees, how could the arrogant boy in front of him resist? With his hand, Lu Xiaowei seemed to see the scene of Li Tianlan's arm being chopped off. The scene really appeared. In the shrill scream, blood splashed, and an arm flew directly into the sky and fell to the ground. But it was not Li Tianlan's arm, but Lu Xiaowei's arm that held the saber. At that moment, Li Tianlan didn't defend at all. Naturally, there was defense in the martial arts he practiced, but the ultimate attack had long been engraved in his bones and blood, and had even become an instinct. Facing the saber from below, Li Tianlan directly put away the human emperor stuck in the trees. The 2-meter-long spear instantly shrank and became a metal tube less than 20 centimeters long. Li Tianlan held the metal tube with both hands and pulled it to both ends. In an instant, the sword light was like lightning. The metal tube was divided into two, and two slender sword blades directly popped out of the metal tube, and the horrible sword intent instantly broke out. It seemed to be the sword intent that had been sealed for a long time. It was distant, sharp, fierce, and unparalleled in the world. The two trees blocking the human emperor were directly and completely torn apart in less than a second, and the thick trunks were chopped into countless pieces flying in the air. Li Tianlan's sword light did not stop. He blocked Lu Xiaowei's fire saber with one sword and chopped off one of his arms with the other. Li Tianlan's eyes were cold, and he held two swords in his hands. The bright sword light danced wildly in the woods, and the horrible sword energy rose and fell like the tide, never stopping. At the same time, the east of the woods, the end of the maneuver, there were two big screens erected in front of Zhuang Huayang and other teachers of the Sky Academy, and almost everyone's eyes were focused on the second screen. The first screen was divided into countless small squares, showing the scenes of the freshmen in the maze, and there were many scenes of fighting. The second screen, which was responsible for showing the situation of the whole woods, had only one scene at this time. On the screen, dense leaves were flying in the air, and sword light rose from time to time, cutting the curtain-like leaves into pieces. Then more leaves directly filled the gap. Lu Xiaowei's scream came through the screen, making everyone's scalp numb. Under the cover of the leaves, no one could see the real fighting scene, but everyone still watched carefully, trying to find some clues from the sword light that occasionally pierced the sky. In the whole battlefield, the trees within a radius of dozens of meters were all dancing wildly. Wherever the scream went, there would be sword light. Then, the trees were completely torn apart by the sword energy that seemed to have gone out of control. The trees fell down one by one and disappeared, but the sword light did not show any sign of decline. Instead, it became more and more fierce. No one could see the real fighting scene, but everyone's mind was filled with a scene that made their scalps numb. Just by looking at the momentum, it could be seen how miserable the battlefield covered by leaves was being torn by the sword light. Being in a mess was an understatement. "Headmaster, I'll go and have a look." In the oppressive silence, Gu Yunxia, who was sitting behind Zhuang Huayang, suddenly stood up with a determined look. "Sit down," Zhuang Huayang said calmly without raising his eyelids. But Gu Yunxia's expression was uncertain. Lu Xiaowei was her confidant in the Sky Academy, and the whole Lu family was one of the most important peripheral forces of Kunlun City. Now that Lu Xiaowei was in danger, she had to help him. "Headmaster, Director Xiaowei is highly respected in the Sky Academy and a very capable teacher. Now he has obviously suffered a loss. If we don't help him, it will disappoint his colleagues." Gu Yunxia hesitated and directly dragged all the teachers in, ready to use them to resist the pressure from Zhuang Huayang. "Disappoint?" Zhuang Huayang smiled noncommittally. "When Director Xiaowei attacked that freshman just now, why weren't you afraid that the freshman would be disappointed? When Director Xiaowei chased him into the woods, why didn't you do anything? When the deputy director of the school took the initiative to attack the freshman, ask for his weapon, and protect his relative, why didn't you do anything? Now you're telling me that you're disappointed? Yunxia, there's something wrong with your position. Remember, you're the director of teaching of the Sky Academy, not the protector of a deputy director. Sit down." Gu Yunxia's expression changed dramatically. She gritted her teeth and sat down without saying a word, her face livid. At this point, if she still insisted on saving Lu Xiaowei, she would really be going against Zhuang Huayang. She took a deep breath. She stared at the second screen with cold eyes, and the killing intent and doubt flashed in her eyes. How could Lu Xiaowei lose? What was happening beneath the leaves? How could he lose? Lu Xiaowei was also thinking about this. Now he could only dodge an embarrassment under Li Tianlan's double swords, and even the most basic counterattack was difficult for him. Before this, he never thought that Li Tianlan could be so horrible. He had such abundant sword intent, but he had to use a spear. Damn it! An unprecedented movement technique, a rare and strange weapon, and a relentless ruthlessness. These were all the reasons for his failure, but it was useless to think about them now. The pain of losing an arm spread throughout his body. Blood flowed, and his consciousness was a little blurred. His body was filled with pain and exhaustion, which made it impossible for him to fully concentrate. Even the flame on his body was gradually weakening. He lost. Lu Xiaowei knew very well that this time, he had suffered a crushing defeat. From today on, he might become the laughingstock of the whole Sky Academy. It was all because of the freshman in front of him. A strong hatred rose from his heart, so strong that he almost forgot about his hatred and exhaustion. He dodged the sword light in embarrassment, but his eyes gradually became firm. What kind of young man was he? In the fierce sword light, Lu Xiaowei seemed to see the rise of the Chosen One, all the way to the peak of the invincible realm. Kill him. If he didn't die, the whole Lu family would suffer a disaster in the future. He still had the power to strike. After this strike, even if he became the laughingstock of the Sky Academy, even if he had to recuperate for a long time, even if he fell to the ice-condensing realm, as long as he could kill him, everything would be worth it. The sword light danced. The fire around Lu Xiaowei suddenly flared up. The vast fire rose into the sky, as if the whole forest was burning. Lu Xiaowei's pupils suddenly became extremely fanatical. He looked at Li Tianlan with unrelieved hatred in his eyes and said ferociously, "Go to hell, bastard!" The soaring flame kept condensing in his roar, and finally condensed into a nearly solid long flame saber. "Go to hell!" Lu Xiaowei roared and fiercely chopped down. The unique skill of the Lu family. 6 directions chop. Among all the moves that Lu Tianqing had learned in his life, 6 directions chop was definitely one of the most powerful moves. Countless strong enemies had been defeated by this move. The flame was dazzling. The long saber chopped down. The falling saber almost blocked all of Li Tianlan's retreat. Unavoidable? Li Tianlan suddenly looked up. In his pupils, there was a long saber condensed by flames, like the smile of the god of death. The closer the long saber was, the closer death was. He narrowed his eyes tightly, held the 2 swords, and suddenly strode forward, then took a small step to the left. His posture was extremely strange, but it was as fast as a shooting star. Front and back, left and right. Every time Li Tianlan took a step, his steps were different. In an instant, countless footprints were left in front of Lu Xiaowei. At this moment, Li Tianlan was still moving, but Lu Xiaowei was not sure whether Li Tianlan was moving forward, backward, left, or right. Lu Xiaowei's pupils instantly contracted to the limit. He finally knew what this set of body movements was. In an instant, his hatred for Li Tianlan deepened countless times. 10 years ago, a martial arts genius in Zhongzhou State successfully entered the invincible realm. In the second month after he entered the invincible realm, the genius directly challenged Lu Tianqing, one of the strongest experts in Zhongzhou State at that time. The 2 sides agreed to fight on Mount Taibai. Lu Tianqing, who had been in the invincible realm for many years, fought with the genius from morning to dusk. Lu Tianqing was killed in the fight, and didn't even get out of Mount Taibai. Since then, the genius's body movements became one of the top unique skills in the dark world. It was precisely because of the restraint of that body movement on Lu Tianqing. The drawbacks of the unique martial arts skill of the Lu family were widely known. But now, that famous movement technique had actually appeared in the hands of the freshman opposite him. The long flame saber was still roaring and burning. Li Tianlan's body kept moving. At this time, Lu Xiaowei couldn't even be sure whether Li Tianlan was still moving. How could he lock on when his sight and feeling couldn't be sure? Boom. The long saber finally fell, but the falling point was ridiculously wrong. The blade directly chopped 2 meters away from Li Tianlan. Around them, the forest within dozens of meters suddenly burned wildly. Li Tianlan had taken another step and appeared in front of Lu Xiaowei. The long sword in his hand was against Lu Xiaowei's throat. Tao. Lu Xiaowei opened his mouth to shout, but Li Tianlan directly interrupted him. His eyes were cold, and with the arrogance and indifference of a winner, he said calmly, "Kneel." "How can you? I asked you to kneel." Lu Xiaowei finally recovered from the shock. He looked at Li Tianlan and suddenly burst into laughter. "Kneel? Dream on. You want me to kneel? So what if I don't kneel? You dared to cut off the arm of the deputy director of the Sky Academy, which is equal to hurting a teacher. This is disobedience. Let's see who can protect you." When some people talked about rules, they would talk about strength. But when they used strength, they would talk about rules. Li Tianlan smiled and narrowed his eyes. "You're the deputy director of the Sky Academy now? Didn't you appear as Lu Dongchao's uncle? Bastard. I've always been the deputy director of the Sky Academy, and that's my only identity. You'll be expelled from the school. You. Swish. Li Tianlan directly stabbed Lu Xiaowei's throat with his sword. The blade went through his throat, and blood dripped. It was straightforward. Lu Xiaowei suddenly opened his eyes, and a trace of chagrin and regret flashed in his eyes. But more than that, he couldn't believe it. You dare to kill. You're just Lu Dongchao's uncle. Why can't I dare to kill you? Li Tianlan looked into Lu Xiaowei's eyes and said calmly. Bang. Lu Xiaowei's body fell to the ground, but he still opened his eyes wide and looked in Li Tianlan's direction. Chapter 25. In the battlefield that was torn apart by the sword light, Lu Xiaowei's body fell down among the broken wood and coke, raising a lot of smoke and dust. The sword went through his throat without leaving any room. Li Tianlan didn't know how Lu Xiaowei felt about such a way of death, but he felt wronged for him. An expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm died in the hands of a nonentity who had just entered the chi-controlling realm. Lu Xiaowei probably never dreamed of such a way of death. The woods became quiet. Li Tianlan breathed gently and forcibly suppressed the taste of blood in his throat. After a long while, he moved his body and put the two swords in his hands together. The two slender long swords disappeared, and the human emperor once again became the inconspicuous metal tube, which he put into his sleeve. Lu Xiaowei's body was lying on the ground, covered by smoke and dust. The majestic deputy director of the Sky Academy was now in tatters, and he was as embarrassed as a stray dog. Li Tianlan reached out and closed his eyes, which he refused to close even if he died. He said to himself indifferently, "This is a good place with good feng shui, suitable for a long sleep. What are you dissatisfied with?" In the dust, Lu Xiaowei's eyes, which were forcibly closed, opened again, and there seemed to be a trace of unwillingness and regret in his dim pupils. This was probably a true death with everlasting regret. Li Tianlan twitched the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were indifferent. As he said to Lu Xiaowei in the maze, he had no way out. Hand over the human emperor? Break his own arm? Li Tianlan couldn't accept such a condition. If Lu Xiaowei had left him a way out in the maze, he might not have killed Lu Xiaowei today, not to mention what would happen in the future. When Lu Xiaowei blocked all the ways out for Li Tianlan, he also completely ruined his own life. "Damn you," Li Tianlan said again. Li Tianlan added. Then he stood up, identified the direction, and rushed toward the southeast end of the maneuver. Behind him, countless water droplets suddenly appeared in the void. The water droplets scattered, completely extinguishing the fire on the ground, and washing the dust off Lu Xiaowei's face. The leaves fluttering in the air slowly fell down, completely covering the battlefield. The leaves that blocked the satellite dispersed. In the east of the forest, the teachers at the end of the maneuver finally saw everything on the battlefield through the satellite. Branches that had been burned into charcoal by the flames, pieces of ice scattered everywhere, tree trunks that had been cut by sword lights, deep pits on the ground, fallen leaves and flying dust. The entire battlefield had been destroyed by the terrifying and fierce battle. Everyone subconsciously held their breath, and their eyes followed the floating leaves on the screen. They were eager to know the final result of this battle. Then, they saw Lu Xiaowei lying on the ground with his eyes wide open. Everyone gasped. Most of the teachers stared blankly at Lu Xiaowei's body on the screen, thinking that they had seen it wrong. But the sword wound on Lu Xiaowei's throat was so clear that it was a little dazzling. All of this showed that Lu Xiaowei was killed by that freshman. How did he do it? Even in the entire Sky Academy, Lu Xiaowei was one of the few experts. Perhaps his strength was not at the top, but he was definitely at the forefront. Such a figure was killed by a freshman, which put a lot of pressure on many teachers. More people subconsciously looked at Gu Yunxia's expression. Lu Xiaowei's death was definitely a considerable blow to Gu Yunxia. The teaching office of the Sky Academy had 1 director and 3 deputy directors. Among the 4 directors, Lu Xiaowei was the only expert who had not entered the thundershocking realm. When the school was forming the school's leadership before the beginning of the semester, Gu Yunxia made great efforts to promote Lu Xiaowei to the teaching office. She even made the relatively young Qin Ku the deputy director, which was part of the result of Gu Yunxia's compromise with Zhuang Huayang. Gu Yunxia's original intention of letting Lu Xiuwei to the teaching office was to expand her right to speak in the Sky Academy. But now Lu Xiuwei was killed by a freshman at the beginning of the semester. Gu Yunxia didn't care about how much face she had lost, but at least her situation in the Sky Academy would be more difficult in the future. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Gu Yunxia's face tightened and her resentful eyes stared at the screen. The anger that almost overwhelmed her reason kept brewing in her heart. The sympathetic, or gloating eyes from all directions added fuel to the fire, making her furious heart explode in an instant. She suddenly stood up, looked at Zhuang Huayang beside her, and said in a gloomy tone, "Headmaster, Deputy Director Lu was killed." Yes, what a pity. Compared with Gu Yunxia's rage, Zhuang Huayang seemed calm and even had a smile on his face when he said this. Gu Yunxia became more and more irritable. She looked at Zhuang Huayang with undisguised coldness and said, "Headmaster, I think we have to do something. Deputy Director Lu can't be sacrificed in vain." Sacrifice. In the Sky Academy, a special warfare academy with a strong military atmosphere, this word was undoubtedly one of the most serious words. Zhuang Huayang raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Oh, what are you going to do, Director Gu?" "I'm going to catch the little bastard named Li Tianlan now, abolish his martial arts, expel him from the Sky Academy, and report it to Kunlun City and the Ministry of State Security to send him to the Special Warfare Court," Gu Yunxia said without hesitation. Her cold tone seemed to be squeezed out from between her teeth, with unspeakable viciousness. This kind of bastard, who has no respect for his elders and doesn't know how to respect his teachers, will be a total scourge if he stays here. Several ordinary teachers near Gu Yunxia were also frightened, and their scalps tingled. It was already a very serious punishment to abolish his martial arts and expel him from the Sky Academy. Reporting it to Kunlun City and the Ministry of State Security was tantamount to labeling Li Tianlan as never employed by the Special Warfare System of Zhongzhou State. Sending him to the Special Warfare Court was undoubtedly the most severe punishment. The role of the Special Warfare Court was similar to that of the military court, but it was harsher. Once sent to the Special Warfare Court, few people would have a good end. Gu Yunxia was completely going to punish Li Tianlan to death. It's a joke. Before Zhuang Huayang opened his mouth, a wild and unruly voice suddenly sounded with undisguised disdain and contempt. "I don't think this freshman did anything wrong. Why should he abolish his martial arts and expel him from the Sky Academy? Ridiculous." Lu Xiuwei shamelessly broke the rules of the maneuver. Can't he let him fight back? "Gu Yunxia, are you blind or deaf?" Lu Xiuwei himself said that he didn't show up as the deputy director of the Sky Academy. What nonsense are you talking about? Respect his teachers? Bullshit. What this freshman did today was self-defense. If he didn't do this, would he really have to hand over his weapon and cripple his own arm to satisfy you, Director Gu? Does the Sky Academy need such a spineless coward? Does it? You. Gu Yunxia flew into a rage. Her face, which looked extremely mean, turned red, but she couldn't say a word. Near Zhuang Huayang, a middle-aged man stood up, nodded to Zhuang Huayang casually, and said with a smile, "Headmaster, do you think what I said makes sense? What kind of bullshit senior is Lu Xiuwei doing today? It's a disgrace to the Sky Academy. He broke the rules of the maneuver for personal revenge, and killed the talents of the Imperial Special Warfare System. What the hell? Does such a person deserve the word sacrifice? I suggest throwing his body out of the Sky Academy, so as not to pollute the land of the Sky Academy. Yi Fengcheng, you've gone too far." Gu Yunxia's anger completely broke out, and she screamed and roared at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was slightly startled, and then he laughed out loud. His figure was ordinary, and even slightly short, but when he stood there, he had an indescribable arrogance and fierce aura. His appearance could still be considered handsome, but the 5 or 6 centimeters long scar on the left side of his face destroyed the overall beauty of his overall beauty, making him look more fierce and valiant. Am I going too far, or are you angry with shame? Look at the disgusting things your confidant has done. It's a good thing for Li Tianlan to kill this black sheep, but throwing him out of the Sky Academy is a light punishment. How dare you say to expel Li Tianlan, and send him to the Special Warfare Court. Don't you care about your face at all? If you dare to do anything to this freshman, you'll have to go through me first. At worst, we'll fight to the death now. Gu Yunxia, do you dare or not? Gu Yunxia's shriveled body trembled with anger. She pointed at Yi Fengcheng and said, you for a long time, but she couldn't say anything else. As for the ordinary teachers behind them, they didn't dare to say anything. For them, the scene in front of them was a real fight between immortals. This year's senior officials of the Sky Academy were almost clearly divided into three forces. Headmaster Zhuang Huayang's force was undoubtedly the largest. Second was the force of Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching. She was backed by Kunlun City, the power center of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Therefore, even if her force was weaker than Zhuang Huayang's, she was full of confidence most of the time. The third force was headed by Yi Fengcheng, the director of the political department of the Sky Academy. This force had existed almost since the establishment of the Sky Academy, and its foundation was very solid. Yi Fengcheng himself was a core member of a top wealthy family in Yuzhou, the capital, so the follow-up development potential of this force was also not weak. Even outside the Sky Academy, these three people were now the backbone of the three super forces in Zhongzhou State. At this time no one knew how fierce the conflict would go. So who dared to speak rashly? If this kind of conflict spread outside the Sky Academy, and the three super behemoths took action, no ordinary teacher could bear that kind of pressure. That's enough. Seeing that Gu Yunxia was about to fight with Yi Fengcheng in anger, Zhuang Huayang finally said, "On the first day of school, you two senior officials of the school are quarreling. What do you think it is?" He waved his hand and said in an unquestionable tone, "Sit down." Yi Fengcheng glanced at Gu Yunxia with disdain, and sat down lazily. His eyes continued to wander on the two big screens in front of him. Gu Yunxia stood still, and looked directly at Zhuang Huayang with cold eyes. "Headmaster, Deputy Director Liu." "What Deputy Director Liu?" Zhuang Huayang laughed and said, "What I saw was just Lu Dongchao's uncle. Lu Xiuwei said it himself. Didn't you hear it, Yunxia?" Gu Yunxia was tongue-tied. This was the part where she was in the wrong. In the past, she was eloquent, but what Lu Xiuwei did was really disgusting. Even if she wanted to speak up for him now, she didn't know what to say. "Yunxia, what is the Sky Academy in your eyes? What is the position of the senior officials of the Sky Academy in your eyes? Can we senior officials give up our principles for a relative? When you want to kill someone, you throw away your official identity, and when you are killed, you take out your official identity. Why is the official identity of our senior officials providing us with a reasonable protection to kill people? And the people you kill are not enemies but your own students. In your eyes, is it normal for such a senior official of the Sky Academy? Is it reasonable?" Zhuang Huayang looked at Gu Yunxia and asked slowly. His tone was not fast, but every word he said brought great pressure to Gu Yunxia. Although he did not speak harshly, the meaning in his words was also very heavy. "Headmaster, I didn't mean that," Gu Yunxia said subconsciously. "I don't care what you mean." Zhuang Huayang waved his hand and said, "I only know that your proposal just now is very unreasonable. As for Lu Xiuwei, he broke the rules of the maneuver as Lu Dongchao's uncle, and now he was killed as Lu Dongchao's uncle. This is a personal grudge. Whoever kills who lives and who dies, they all deserve it. If you don't want to discredit the Sky Academy, you have to accept this. Do you understand?" "Headmaster, you're wise." Sitting nearby, Yi Fengcheng threw a cigarette to Zhuang Huayang with a smile and said, "During the entrance maneuver, the deputy director of teaching openly tore off his official identity to break the rules of the maneuver and kill a freshman. In the end, he was killed instead. Tut-tut. People will not only question the moral character of the senior officials of the Sky Academy, but also the strength of the senior officials of the Sky Academy. What kind of King deputy director is this? In addition to discrediting the Sky Academy, he has no effect at all. He deserves to die. As for the freshman, well, he is a talent, and the school should focus on training him." Zhuang Huayang smiled. He said that Lu Xiuwei deserved to die, which was not the same meaning as Yi Fengcheng. But at this time he did not bother to explain anything, just looked at Yi Fengcheng and said with a smile, "Fengcheng, are you also interested in that freshman?" Yes. Yi Fengcheng keenly captured this word. His eyes turned cold, and his smile faded. Oh, talents are rare. Zhuang Huayang nodded and said no more, but he was sure in his heart that the reason why Yi Fengcheng jumped out to attack Gu Yunxia was not only because Lu Xiuwei was a little rude to Wang Yuetong, but also because he really wanted to win over Li Tianlan. He looked at the screen, and his eyes fell on Li Tianlan. He sighed in his heart and shook his head. Gu Yunxia was also looking at Li Tianlan on the screen. With her back to Yi Fengcheng and Zhuang Huayang, she narrowed her eyes tightly. The resentment and killing intent in her eyes were constantly surging, as if there was no rest. On the screen, Li Tianlan was walking quickly in the woods. He lowered his head and opened the credit counting table on his wrist. Gu Yunxia snorted, gritted her teeth, and sat back in her seat. The credit counting table of the Sky Academy had a lot of functions, but it was not complicated. In the Student Code of Conduct, there were instructions about the use of the credit counting table. After careful study, Li Tianlan could basically master it. The credit counting table had positioning and communication functions. In order not to put Li Beitian and others in danger, Li Tianlan turned off the wristwatch as soon as he rushed out of the maze. At this time, Lu Xiuwei was dead. He opened the map on the wristwatch and directly found 2 red dots on the map. His wristwatch only had the friends of Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian, so he could only locate them. As for Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan, they should still be with them at this time. Li Tianlan pressed a button, said hello, and asked directly, Beitian, is there anything going on there? At the other end of the woods, Li Beitian and others who were walking all the way east had already noticed something wrong. They were even sure that Li Tianlan did not go all the way east. At this time, they were hesitating whether to split up to find Li Tianlan. Hearing Li Tianlan's voice, Li Beiqian's anxious and surprised voice came directly through the table. Tianlan, how are you? F*CKU. Why did you turn off the positioning? Don't you understand that there is strength in numbers? Stupid as a pig. You are going to be F*King killed. How can I go back in? Li Beitian paused and then said, Where is Lu Xiuwei, that old bastard? I am still alive, so he is naturally dead. Chapter 26. Following the positioning information on the map, when Li Tianlan, Li Beitian, and the others met up, the battle that was sprinting toward the finish line was also coming to an end. About 6 or 7 senior students of the Sky Academy of different sizes, male and female, were lying on the ground. At this time, all of them were unconscious. Specks of dark red blood spattered on the surrounding trees and grass, which was ghastly and glaring. Li Beiqian's face was pale. Being carried on Ning Qianqing's back, blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth. He was much taller than Ning Qianqing, so even if he was lying on Ning Qianqing's back, his feet would touch the ground from time to time, which looked a little funny. Ning Qianqing seemed to be in a better state, but at this time, he was also covered in blood, and there were 2 deep knife wounds on his arms that had not been bandaged. Yu Qingyan was lying near them in a coma. Wang Yuetong, known as the Siren, had undoubtedly become the most eye-catching existence in the whole battlefield. The vast sword energy rotated around her tall and slender body. Behind her, a huge sword completely condensed from mysterious ice hung in the air and trembled slightly. Different from the one seen in the maze, the huge sword behind her at this time was 5 or 6 meters long and more than 2 meters wide. The heavy sword body only trembled slightly, but it made a harsh sound in the air. The simple and heavy sword intent condensed and dissipated around the huge sword. Wang Yuetong's face was expressionless, and her enchanting little face was full of arrogance and indifference. Li Tianlan subconsciously glanced around and looked at the large pieces of cut trees on the battlefield. He could completely imagine the posture of Wang Yuetong controlling the huge sword behind her to attack with all her strength. It might not be appropriate to describe such an enchanting woman as majestic and domineering, but at this moment, in Li Tianlan's imagination, Wang Yuetong, who controlled the huge ice sword behind her to defeat all her opponents, was indeed extraordinarily majestic and domineering. Li Tianlan calmly stopped outside the range of Wang Yuetong's sword qi and coughed. At this moment, Wang Yuetong was obviously still immersed in the rhythm of the battle just now. At this time, once he entered the range of her sword qi, What awaited Li Tianlan was likely to be a full blow from her. Li Tianlan had never heard of such a huge sword, such a unique skill, and the Wang family of Beihai. But at this moment, feeling the vast and delicate sword qi, he was completely sure that it was a top unique skill in the entire dark world. Li Tianlan was still in the ice-condensing realm. It was not difficult for him to take the blow, but it was not easy either. "Are you guys okay?" Li Tianlan asked. As he spoke, the silent battlefield suddenly became lively. Li Beitian, who was lying on Ning Qianqing's back, quickly raised his head and glanced at Li Tianlan. Seeing that Li Tianlan was not missing an arm or a leg, the corner of his mouth twitched and he said weakly, "Damn you." "It's all right." Ning Qianqing also seemed to heave a sigh of relief, and a smile appeared on his face. He bounced Li Beitian on his back and said with a smile, "But this fellow will probably need to rest for a few days. Since the scene of a beauty rescuing a bear has come out, of course he will be fine." The indifference and pride on Wang Yuetong's face disappeared little by little. A smile that could almost enchant people appeared on her face again. The huge sword on her back quickly dissipated, became blurred, and finally disappeared without a trace. Wang Yuetong carried the unconscious Yu Qingyan on her back, and walked to Li Tianlan's side. She stared at Li Tianlan with her clear eyes. After a while, she said in a strange tone, "Did you really kill Lu Xiaowei?" "It was just a fluke." Li Tianlan was unwilling to talk more. He just looked at the unconscious Yu Qingyan and frowned. "What the hell is going on? I was sneak attacked." Wang Yuetong seemed to be a little dissatisfied with Li Tianlan's perfunctory answer. She wrinkled her nose and said, "A brilliant disciple from Mount Shu wanted to defeat Lu Dongyu with one move in the maze. He barely managed to do it. Although he did not use his sword, he was seriously injured. After he came out, he was distracted because he was worried about you in an environment that could be dangerous at any time. As a result, he was sneak attacked and was the first to lose his combat power. As for Qingyan, she is still too naive and timid. What she has learned is not suitable for the rhythm of the Sky Academy's maneuver. It's all about killing people. Therefore, she was restrained and was the second to be eliminated. Qianqing took care of Li Taishu and Qingyan, and I was the only one left to deal with those sneak attackers." Li Beitian seemed to be a little ashamed. He struggled to climb down from Ning Qianqing's back and said with no confidence, "Believe it or not, I can definitely kill Lu Dongyu in seconds with that sword." "I do," Wang Yuetong said with a smile. "But even if you can kill Lu Dongyu in seconds, how good can you be? I guess you are really weak, right? Am I right, Li Taishu?" "My name is Li Beitian." Li Beitian was about to cry. "Damn it, when I was in Mount Shu, I was always called Taishu, or Martial Uncle Taishu by my senior brother. My ass, I'm not weak at all, okay? Taishu. If I continue to call you by that name, I can't even marry a wife in the future. My name is Li Beitian. Whoever calls me Li Taishu again, I'll fall out with him." "Got it, Taishu," Ning Qianqing said with a poker face. "Drunbility Chung. You. What's wrong, Brother Su?" "I." Li Tianlan held back his laughter and walked up to them. He said sincerely, "Thank you. It's not necessary." Ning Qianqing shook his head. "We are brothers in the same dormitory. Don't be so polite." Li Beitian also shook his head and looked at Li Tianlan. He had a lot of questions in his heart, such as Li Tianlan's realm and how he killed Lu Xiaowei. But when the questions were on the tip of his tongue, he held back and said, "Let's go first. It's not far from the finish line. If you have anything to say, wait until the maneuver is over." "I do want to go." Li Tianlan smiled. The silver human emperor slipped quietly into his palm, and he held it tightly. "But I'm afraid someone won't let me." Li Beitian was stunned, and his eyes became alert. Wang Yuetong also moved to Li Tianlan's side. She put Yu Qingyan down and stood side by side with Li Tianlan. Li Beitian and Ning Qianqing looked at each other. They were not worried. Among the 5 people now, Li Beitian and Yu Qingyan had no fighting capacity, but Ning Qianqing could still fight. The most important thing was that Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan were already standing together. They had all seen Wang Yuetong's attack just now. This little woman, known as the Wang Siren but with few specific rumors, was more than powerful and domineering just now. When the 5 or 6 meter long giant sword came out, it was really unparalleled in the world. From the beginning to the end of the battle, the whole process took less than 10 seconds. It was a complete suppression. On the list of the top 10 experts of the young generation, Wang Yuetong was ranked behind Ning Qiancheng, but her actual combat capacity was much higher than Ning Qiancheng's. Needless to say, such a person standing together with Li Tianlan, who could kill Lu Xiuwei, an expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm, at the ice-condensing realm, gave them a sense of security. Light footsteps sounded in the woods dozens of meters away. Li Tianlan gently rubbed the human emperor in his hand, and he was as quiet as a statue. Behind Wang Yuetong, the giant ice sword rose again. The sword energy spread and completely enveloped Li Beitian and the others. In this domain, no matter who was attacked, Wang Yuetong could immediately condense her sword energy at one point and attack any enemy. Li Tianlan frowned subconsciously, and his body tensed up a little quietly. Then, as if he had realized something, he relaxed again. It was a short time, and the change was extremely fast. But in an instant, Wang Yuetong keenly captured some subtle changes. She suddenly turned her head and opened her watery and charming eyes wide, looking at Li Tianlan with a trace of undisguised shock. "Senior brother Tianlan, how did you do it?" Wang Yuetong asked. She took a step toward Li Tianlan, and her delicate body was almost attached to Li Tianlan's. "What?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. "You know what I'm talking about." Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan persistently, with a trace of scorching and seriousness in her eyes that could make any man shudder. At that moment, her sword qi naturally spread around, trying to envelop everyone and form a whole. But when the sword qi enveloped Li Tianlan, Wang Yuetong found that her sword qi was completely isolated. All the sword qi could not get close to Li Tianlan. The land where he was seemed to have become a world of its own, invulnerable to all enemies. What did this mean? It not only meant that Li Tianlan's method was ingenious, but also meant that in the domain shrouded by Wang Yuetong's sword energy, if she was Li Tianlan's enemy, then this unique skill of hers would be a great flaw and weakness. How could the unique skill of the Wang family of Beihai have a flaw? Wang Yuetong's heart beat violently. She looked at Li Tianlan, hoping that he could give her an answer. But Li Tianlan kept silent from beginning to end. "Senior brother Tianlan, you don't trust me, do you?" Wang Yuetong suddenly said. "Do you trust me, junior sister Yuetong?" Li Tianlan replied calmly. His first impression of Wang Yuetong was not bad, but he did not dare to trust her too much. It was completely out of instinct. He always felt that this junior sister was a little too smart. It seemed that if he revealed a little more, she could guess his identity. This sense of danger made Li Tianlan want to stay away from her completely subconsciously. Wang Yuetong also fell silent. Trust? If she was just an ordinary girl, this word was really worthless in her heart. But she was not. She was a siren in everyone's eyes, a princess in everyone's eyes, and a core member of the top rich and powerful family in Zhongzhou State. Trust was a luxury for her. It was not that she could not have it, but it was not easy to get it. Wang Yuetong gently bit her lip and blinked her charming eyes. For a moment, she could not tell what she was feeling. The footsteps were getting closer and more obvious. While Li Tianlan was listening attentively and judging the number of people, Wang Yuetong's voice rang in his ear again. "Senior brother Tianlan, do you have a girlfriend?" Her voice was low, husky, and charming. Her slightly trembling voice seemed to be transmitted to the depths of people's hearts, with irresistible temptation. Ning Qiancheng and Li Beiqian's bodies shook at the same time, but they did not speak. Li Tianlan thought of Qin Weibai immediately. He thought of the woman who could not be described with any flowery words. Girlfriend? Li Tianlan was a little lost in thought. He had not been in contact with Qin Weibai for a long time, just a day. But in this one day, she directly walked into his heart in a manner that could not be refused. Even if he wanted to, he could not. Would she be his girlfriend? Li Tianlan laughed at himself and said softly, "No." His voice was light and breezy, but in Wang Yuetong's ears, there was a hint of indifference and loneliness in his voice. Wang Yuetong's heart trembled slightly. Blushing because of what she said just now, she went further and said softly, "I don't have a boyfriend either." Damn, it hurts my eyes. No, it hurts my ears. Yuetong, should I not have shown up? Our little princess actually took the initiative to confess her love to someone? Is it possible? Ah, is it possible? Brother, I advise you not to say yes. Don't say yes. If you say yes, it is estimated that the number of people who want to challenge you can line up from Huating to Yuzhou. You have to take it easy, take it easy. A playful voice suddenly rang out. In the sight of Li Tianlan and others, a short and fat figure appeared about 10 meters away from them with several senior students. Li Tianlan was stunned. Wang Yuetong seemed to be a little surprised too. But when she heard the content of the other's words, her blushing beautiful face became even redder. The huge sword behind her also carried a trace of undisguised killing intent. She stamped her feet hard and gritted her teeth. Fan Haoyu, which eye of yours saw me confess my love? I dare you to say it again. The smile on the short and fat man's face froze. Looking at the angry killing intent in Wang Yuetong's eyes, he suddenly felt a little embarrassed and did not dare to come forward for a moment. He rolled his eyes and accidentally found Ning Qiancheng, who was carrying Li Beitian on his back. He laughed and said, Qiancheng is also here. Long time no see. Why are you together? He took a tentative step forward and at the same time, carefully glanced at Wang Yuetong's face. If you want to come over, then come over. What are you looking at? The huge sword behind Wang Yuetong disappeared again, and she said fiercely. Fan Haoyu walked over with an embarrassed smile and rubbed his hands. He seemed to be a little guilty and did not know what to say for a moment. Fatty Fan, why are you here? Wang Yuetong's face was still red, and she looked at Fan Haoyu curiously and asked. This place is the territory of our elite organization. Just now I heard something nearby and knew that someone attacked the freshmen, so I rushed over to get a few credit meters. Who knew you were here? Fan Haoyu said with a wry smile. Wang Yuetong giggled and let go of all her hostility. She pulled Li Tianlan's arm with her slender and white fingers and said with a smile, Senior brother Tianlan, let me introduce you. This is Fan Haoyu, you can call him Fatty Fan. He is my friend. He and his elite organization are also one of the organizations of senior students who stayed in school last year. But this fatty is different from Lu Dongchao and his sister. Don't underestimate him. Lu Dongchao and his sister are powerful when they fight together. If you face this fatty alone, no one can survive 3 moves from him. He is an expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm. Li Tianlan was shocked. Fan Haoyu in front of him was indeed short and fat. He was less than 1.7 meters tall, but he weighed at least 100 kilograms. Moreover, he liked winking when he spoke, which made him look extremely wretched. He did not look like an expert in any way, but the words peak of the fire-flaming realm were enough to dispel all his doubts. Li Tianlan sighed inwardly that he could not judge a book by its cover. He took the initiative to extend his hand and said softly, Hello, I am Li Tianlan. This is senior brother Tianlan, the most outstanding freshman of this year. Wang Yuetong grinned and casually put a high hat on Li Tianlan's head. A strange look flashed across Fan Haoyu's face. Then he held Li Tianlan's hand with a smile and said, Nice to meet you. Ning Qiancheng and Li Beitian stood on the other side. They were obviously not interested in such an occasion. By the way, why did you come by yourself? Where is Sumai? Wang Yuetong asked impatiently when she saw Fan Haoyu shaking Li Tianlan's hand. Like Fan Haoyu, Sumai was the flag leader of the elite organization. Although his strength was slightly inferior, he was also an expert at the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. They were best friends since childhood. There was no reason for him not to show up at this time. Fan Haoyu's face darkened and he said bitterly, he failed miserably and was injured by a freshman. 10 seconds, or even less than 10 seconds. When I rushed over with my men, I was already unconscious. The freshman had already run away. Are you sure it's a freshman? Wang Yuetong frowned and subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan. In terms of strength, Sumai was almost on par with Lu Dongchao. If he overthrew Sumai in 10 seconds, he was almost as good as Li Tianlan. It's a freshman, and the point is that he's in the ice-condensing realm. His name seems to be Gulan. Damn it, I'm so embarrassed this time. Fan Haoyu cursed. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered thoughtfully. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Wang Yuetong thought for a while and shook her head. I'll go see Su Mai after the maneuver. Fatty, I want to ask you about someone. Among the senior students who stayed in this year, there's a woman who uses 2 sabers. She's about 1.7 meters tall, very beautiful, and has long hair. What's her name? Such conditions were far from specific. Fortunately, there were not many senior students who stayed in this year. Fan Haoyu thought for a while and said with some uncertainty, Is she fast? Wang Yuetong's eyes lit up and she nodded. Just now, she led some people to sneak attack us. She's really fast. At the first moment, she seriously injured Li Beitian and one of my roommates. But in the end she ran away, but I killed all the people who followed her. Fan Haoyu walked over and looked at the senior students who were still on the ground. Then he said with certainty, It should be Du Hanin, but hasn't she been disabled? Strange, Yuetong. Du Hanin is an extraordinary person. Do you want me to tell you some gossip about her? I'm not interested. Wang Yuetong shook her head. We don't have time. We're going to the finish line now. Fatty, it should be okay if I lend you a few people to escort us, right? No problem. Fan Haoyu laughed heartily and waved his hand. Gao Chong. Here. A burly senior ran over and gave a military salute to Fan Haoyu. You escort these students all the way to the finish line. Go and come back quickly. Our mission has just begun, you understand? Fan Haoyu said casually. Understood. Gao Chong said in a loud voice. Fan Haoyu nodded, looked at Wang Yuetong, and said with a smile, This is the number 3 figure of our elite organization. Don't worry, with him following you, no senior student will dare to attack you. Your next journey will be absolutely smooth, I can guarantee that. Thank you. Although he knew that Fan Haoyu's help was all because of Wang Yuetong, he still thanked Fan Haoyu very seriously. Fan Haoyu smiled and waved his hand. Brother, see you after the maneuver. With Gao Chong leading the way, the 5 of them went straight to the finish line. Behind them, Fan Haoyu narrowed his eyes and casually sat on an unconscious senior student with a body of more than 100 kilograms, watching them go farther and farther. In his sight, Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan walked side by side, and they were getting closer and closer. Chapter 27. Fan Haoyu was not bragging. The elite organization was really a force that could control the situation among the senior students. Li Tianlan didn't care whether it was cheating to use his connections to get to the finish line, and the others didn't raise any objections, which was enough to show that it was feasible. There was a suspicion of cheating, but it really saved a lot of time and effort. Li Tianlan had no reason to refuse such a good thing, nor did he have the capital to refuse. He was still in the ice-condensing realm, and could barely fight. If he really didn't care about the consequences, he could stay in the ice-condensing realm for a day or 2. Maybe it wouldn't hurt his foundation as Wang Yuetong said, and he would never reach the invincible realm. But with the strength of the chi-controlling realm, the longer he stayed in the ice-condensing realm, the greater the price he would pay. If he stayed for 1 or 2 more hours now, he might have to wait for 1 or 2 more months to break through the ice-condensing realm in the future. Since Li Tianlan left the border, he always had a sense of urgency that made him unable to breathe. Time was the most important thing to him. He didn't want to delay for 1 or 2 days, let alone 1 or 2 months. About a week before the start of the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan had a fight with Qin Ke because of a misunderstanding. A nonentity less than the chi-controlling realm fought against a thundershocking realm expert. One could imagine his injury. In this maneuver, Li Tianlan was originally injured, and he forcibly raised his realm, so his injury was naturally more serious. After coming out of the maze and fighting with Lu Xiuwei, although he had not been fatally injured, his all-out attack had aggravated his injury again. Now Li Tianlan could be said to have real internal injuries, which even hurt his 5 internal organs. Among their temporary group of 5, he was the one who needed to be treated the most. After the maneuver, they would have about a week's vacation, during which they could stay in school to recuperate or go to see the colorful world of Huading. After this week, no matter how the students recovered from their injuries, intensive training and learning would officially begin, as well as a lot of actual combat confrontations and internal maneuvers. In the 3 years of the Sky Academy, if they wanted to get enough credits to compete for the quota that could only be produced every 3 years, personal strength and combat effectiveness were naturally extremely important, but the importance of endurance could not be ignored. Now Gao Chang, the third in command of the elite organization, was willing to personally escort them to the end of the maneuver, which could save them at least 2 or 3 battles. For Li Tianlan, who was eager to stabilize his injury, it was absolutely good news that he could not refuse. However, just as he instinctively wanted to repel Wang Yuetong's sword qi, even with Gao Chang's escort, he did not let down his guard along the way. This vigilance even included Gao Chang, who was leading the way at the front. The 6 of them shuttled through the woods in silence, all the way to the east. In less than half an hour, Li Tianlan found at least 3 places where there were traces of senior students lurking. Perhaps because they saw Gao Chang, no one made a move at all. 40 minutes later, a pool of water came into view. Gao Chang stopped and pointed at the pool in front of them. Everyone, follow the pool for another 300 meters. After turning a corner, you will reach the end. This is as far as I can send you. The pool is the safe zone. Once we step into it, it is equivalent to giving up on the mission or completing the mission. Thank you, Senior. Wang Yuetong smiled sweetly. She was extremely beautiful when she smiled. Her charming eyes squinted slightly with 2 shallow dimples. As the corners of her mouth rose, her whole body carried a kind of charm that seemed to hook people's hearts. The key was that all this temperament was revealed unintentionally, and it was precisely because it was unintentional that it seemed more fatal. No need. Gao Chang's face turned red. He waved his hand in a flurry, and did not even have time to say hello to the others. He turned around and rushed directly into the woods. His figure soon disappeared. As the third in command of the elite organization and his relationship with Fan Haoyu, Gao Chang was no stranger to Wang Yuetong and the Wang family of Beihai, especially the Wang family of Beihai. Over the years, he had heard too many legendary stories about this legendary family. Along the way, he put aside the charm of the little princess of the Wang family, and the mere 4 words of the Wang family of Beihai brought him a lot of pressure. Now that he had successfully completed the mission, he was completely relieved and did not want to stay for another second. When Gao Chang's figure completely disappeared, Li Tianlan and the others began to carefully look at the environment in front of them. The pool in front of them was still in the woods. The water was very shallow, just knee-high. Its length was unknown, but its width was about 300 meters. On the opposite side of the pool was an obvious corner. According to Gao Chang, the corner was the end of the maneuver. Li Tianlan looked at the pool in front of him silently with a calm expression. Crossing a 300-meter-wide pool wasn't a big deal, but the most important thing was that the pool was filled with extremely sharp stones. In the clear water, the stones were laid from one end to the other, and it was enough to make one's scalp go numb just by looking at it. Damn it, this is a bit too much. Ning Qiancheng, who had been quiet all this time, could not help but speak. Looking at the sharp stones under the water, his face was extremely ugly. This kind of stone would be even sharper when stepped on after being soaked in water. Even if their military boots were specially made, the 300-meter-wide pool might not be able to support them to cross half the distance. When the military boots were pierced by the stones and the sharp edges stabbed into their feet, that feeling was worse than death. And this is running water. Who came up with this stupid idea? It's a scam. Li Beitian was lying on Ning Qiancheng's back, and his tone was a little weak. Li Tianlan understood what he meant. If the pool in front of them was not running water, it would not matter even if the bottom was covered with blades, not to mention stones. All 5 of them were now in the ice-condensing realm. If they used all their strength, they could completely freeze the pool temporarily and step on the ice to cross the pool by force. But there was a world of difference between running water and dead water. Moreover, the water in the pool in front of them was very fast. To freeze this kind of water into ice was equivalent to going against the laws of nature. One could imagine the difficulty. Even if they were not injured, they did not have the ability to completely freeze a pool hundreds of meters wide into ice, not to mention that they were all injured. The physical strength and willpower required were not something that experts in the ice-condensing realm, or even the fire-flaming realm could do. Let's go. We have to go sooner or later. There's no point in delaying here. Li Tianlan looked at the rushing water in front of him and said in a calm tone. He casually glanced at Wang Yuetong, who was carrying Yu Qingyan on her back. What do you think, junior sister Yuetong? I'll listen to you, senior brother Tianlan. Wang Yuetong could be said to be the most relaxed person on the scene. She seemed to not take the pool in front of her seriously at all. She casually supported Yu Qingyan's body and said softly, I'm so tired. Li Tianlan was not a fool. How could he not understand such an obvious hint? Indeed, along the way, Ning Qianqing carried Li Beitian on his back, and Wang Yuetong carried Yu Qingyan on her back. It seemed a little unkind for him to be alone. Li Tianlan subconsciously touched his nose and said, Let me carry Qingyan for a while. That won't do. Wang Yuetong glanced at Li Tianlan and said with a faint smile, Men and women should not touch each other. Senior brother Tianlan, don't you know this? Do you want to take advantage of Qingyan? She gently raised her tender white hand and patted Yu Qingyan's buttocks. She squinted and said with a smile, It feels good. It's bouncy and soft. Senior brother, do you want to touch it? Li Tianlan blushed and retreated in defeat. When it came to women, he was really a virgin. In this era where it was inconceivable to be a virgin at the age of 18 or 19, Li Tianlan, who was about to turn 20, was a real weirdo. Not only was he a virgin, but he still had his first kiss. The topic of women was completely mysterious and taboo to him. Li Tianlan subconsciously glanced at Yu Qingyan's pert buttocks. Because she was lying on her stomach, the shape outlined by the camouflage pants was extremely attractive. It was indeed a beautiful scene. But Li Tianlan could not help but think of Qin Weibai. He could not be blamed for being hopeless. Qin Weibai's appearance completely matched the most perfect perfection in Li Tianlan's heart. Her figure, appearance, temperament, speech, behavior, and every expression and movement were the most beautiful scenery in Li Tianlan's heart. Thinking of Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan's heart suddenly became calm. He looked at Wang Yuetong and shook his head slightly. He said calmly, I didn't mean that. Who knows what you're thinking? Wang Yuetong giggled and put Yu Qingyan's body on her shoulder. Then she reached out to Li Tianlan with the other hand and said, This girl is unconscious. I can't let you take advantage of her. You hold my hand. If I can't hold it later, remember to help me. Li Beitian whistled and cackled on Ning Qianqing's back. But when Wang Yuetong glanced at him, he immediately fell silent. Li Tianlan did not think much, and held Wang Yuetong's small hand in his. He felt as if he was holding a piece of the best mutton fat warm jade, warm and smooth. Wang Yuetong's face turned slightly red, but her grip on Li Tianlan's hand tightened slightly. In an instant, Li Tianlan only felt that he was surrounded by a warm feeling. The coldness in his body caused by the forced promotion to the ice-condensing realm also dissipated a lot. He seemed to be relaxed. Li Tianlan was stunned. He turned to look at Wang Yuetong and happened to meet her clear eyes. He could clearly see his own reflection in her eyes. Presumably, she felt the same way. Wang Yuetong's small hand tightened again. She blinked, and then began to go into the water with Yu Qingyan on her back. Li Tianlan understood that the siren of Wang was not tired at all. She clearly sensed that his internal injury was about to break out, so she chose to help him. He wanted to say thank you, but he swallowed the words when they were on the tip of his tongue. But he still felt a little amazed when he felt the warmth in the air around him. Wang Yuetong's realm at this time was not only at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, but also half a step into the fire-flaming realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to help him to this extent. The five of them waded through the water. Wang Yuetong stepped on the stones under her feet, as if she were walking on flat ground, without any discomfort. Li Tianlan was also calm and collected. However, as they walked further and further away, Ning Qianqing, who was carrying Li Beitian on his back, began to show signs of being unable to support himself. His legs trembled slightly with every step, but he continued to carry Li Beitian steadily, and did not complain at all. 50 meters. 150 meters. 230 meters. The other shore was already close at hand. When Ning Qianqing once again lifted his trembling legs and took a step forward, his feet were already dripping with blood. The dark red blood permeated the water, and temporarily blocked the situation at the bottom of the water. Ning Qianqing was not paying attention and was directly tripped by a slightly larger stone. With a muffled groan, he staggered toward the water surface and knelt down. Once Ning Qianqing knelt down with such a sharp stone and Li Baitian's weight, he would have to rest for a few months at best. From then on, he would be left behind in the Sky Academy. In an instant, Li Tianlan suddenly took a step back and suddenly reached out. The moment he grabbed Ning Qianqing's arm, the water within a radius of about 3 to 5 meters suddenly stilled with him as the center. The flowing water turned into ice. The moment Ning Qianqing's fallen knees touched the layer of ice, the ice had already broken. But Ning Qianqing, who had found a fragile point of support, stood up again at the same time. Don't let go. Li Tianlan held Wang Yuetong with one hand and Ning Qianqing with the other. His face was as white as paper, but his tone was still calm like a rock in a glacier. We're almost there, let's go together. Ning Qianqing, who was still in shock, took a deep look at Li Tianlan. He did not say thank you, but carried Li Baitian with one hand and slowly moved forward. Li Baitian looked at Li Tianlan and suddenly said, Tianlan, can you bear it? I'm fine, Li Tianlan said indifferently. His military boots had long been pierced by the stones at the bottom of the water. Almost every time he took a step, blood would gush out of the soles of his feet and flow with the water to an unknown place. But his steps were extremely steady, without the slightest hint of reluctance. Li Baitian could not find any other words to describe his feelings other than to be convinced by such willpower. He glanced at Wang Yuetong again. Compared with them, the little princess of the Wang family was like heaven and earth. Li Baitian estimated that if it were not for them, the little princess would have jumped over the pool. Others walked with difficulty, but she walked casually with a person on her back. Not to mention blood, there was not even a scratch on her skin. It's good to be a privileged person. Li Baitian sighed with emotion, his face full of envy. Don't you know that feet are a girl's second face? If I walk like you, my feet will be in great pain when I go back. If my future boyfriend is a foot fetish, won't I be despised? Wang Yuetong's eyes moved and her smile was gentle. How did you know the contents of the maneuver in advance? Li Baitian could not help but ask. I don't know. Wang Yuetong shook her head and said, but the headmaster reminded me in advance to wear thicker shoes, so I put a layer of cold glue in my shoes. This time, not only Li Baitian, but also Ning Qianqing's mouth was twitching. Not to mention whether it was legal for the headmaster, Zhuang Huayang, to give such a reminder to Wang Yuetong. The layer of cold glue was enough to make people completely speechless. The cold glue technology was a new technology secretly developed by the Zhongzhou state military. It was not mature yet, and most people had not even heard of it. Ning Qianqing and Li Baitian were definitely knowledgeable, but they had only heard the name of cold glue. Who knew that Wang Yuetong could use it to make insoles? Damn privileged people. Li Baitian cursed in his heart and shook his head. For a moment he did not know what to say. 280 meters. They landed. After walking out of the pool and coming back to the relatively flat land, even Li Tianlan felt like he was about to collapse. If it weren't for his extraordinary willpower supporting him, he might not even have the courage to walk into the pool with his injuries. Now that he walked out of the pool again, and was about to reach the end, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He only felt that everything in front of him was black, and he was about to fall to the ground at any time. Qianqing, how are you? Li Tianlan asked Ning Qianqing, whose legs were trembling slightly, after taking a deep breath and barely bracing himself to stand firm. I can still hold on. Ning Qianqing forced a smile and said, let's go. We'll talk about it when we reach the finish line. Li Tianlan nodded, turned directly, and walked to the corner ahead. When they were about to turn, an extremely cold and angry roar suddenly sounded from afar. It was hundreds of meters away, but the voice was still clear. Stop. Li Tianlan and the others looked back at the same time. In their sight, at the other end of the pool, two figures in camouflage rushed into the pool without hesitation. The water under their feet splashed up and instantly froze into a layer of ice. They rushed forward for nearly 20 meters before falling into the water. Even though they fell into the water, they sprinted toward the shore at an extremely fast speed, as if they were not affected by the stones at the bottom of the water at all. Because of the distance, Li Tianlan could not see their faces clearly, nor was he in the mood to look at them carefully. He just glanced at them, turned directly, and said without hesitation, "Let's go." The five turned the corner. 30 meters ahead, the end of the maneuver was in sight. Led by Zhuang Huayang, all the school leaders were present. Behind the leaders were hundreds of school teachers. There was also a pool at the end of the maneuver. On both sides of the pool were two tall screens, which were playing the scenes of the maneuver. Because they were too close, Li Tianlan even saw his own figure in a small grid between the two screens. The entire end of the maneuver was silent. Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian were the first to notice the strange atmosphere. At first, they did not know what was going on, but when they inadvertently saw Li Tianlan and Wang Yuetong in front of them, their expressions suddenly changed slightly. "Tianlan!" Ning Qianqing shouted in a low voice, and there was a rare hint of anxiety in his voice. "Let go of me." Li Tianlan suddenly came to his senses and was stunned. Then he realized that he had been holding Wang Yuetong's little hand since they came ashore. And at the end of the maneuver, the focus of everyone's attention, including Zhuang Huayang's, seemed to be on their tightly clasped hands. There were doubts, oddities, killing intent, fear, and thoughtfulness in people's eyes. Li Tianlan frowned slightly. Suddenly, he felt that the little hand in his hand, which was like a mutton-fat warm jade, moved slightly, as if it wanted to break free. Completely out of instinct, Li Tianlan subconsciously held Wang Yuetong's hand tightly and said faintly, "Don't move." At that moment, Li Tianlan could clearly feel the palm in his hand tremble slightly. Then Wang Yuetong silently lowered her head, letting him hold her hand and walk forward. 30 meters. 20 meters. 15 meters. More and more people gathered on their palms. Li Tianlan's expression became calmer and calmer. 10 meters. A dazzling but tiny electric arc suddenly appeared in front of Li Tianlan. The electric arc came so suddenly that even though Li Tianlan had been on guard, he did not have time to react when the electric light appeared. The next second, Li Tianlan felt his hand go numb, and then it became light again. The figures of Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan had been carried by an extremely seductive and mature woman to the end of the maneuver 10 meters away. She put Wang Yuetong beside her and smiled softly. Her voice was hoarse, but it was indescribably sexy. The first place Wang Yuetong. 2 chapters with 11,000 words. Brothers, are updates really slow? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.